Okay, here we are. And good evening to anyone here in Europe, and good afternoon to our fellows in the States. So I've been cracking on my last two issues of a project I'm working on. I'm trying to do the pages back to back. It's about 50 something pages altogether, and I had this very ambitious goal of doing it in 100 days. Now I have the whole script done and the whole thumbnails and the layouts. That's all been done and worked on. But what I've actually hadn't done yet was actually even started the pencils on it. So 100 days for 50 plus pages, pencils and inks. After 12 days, I realized it was going to be impossible. So right now, I'm already about, well, really going to be fair about it. About 60 plus days have passed, and I only have about 25 pages worked on. That doesn't mean they're complete. 25 pages of kind of sketching, and some of it has inks, but nothing is finished yet. So this is one of them. This is actually page 2 of issue 5, which is the final issue. And so to me, with me today, very luckily, I got a couple of guests which are also working their own projects. I have I have with me passion for drawing. He does like creatures, monsters, D&D kind of themes, drawings, and comics. And you can always tell us more about exactly what you do. But I've seen your work, and I find it very interesting. It's sort of thing I like. And so, how are you anyway? Passion for drawing. You okay?
I'm doing good today. I'm going to work on a project. This is a commission I'm working on for someone's Twitch channel. They wanted some purple dragons and stuff like that. So I do a lot of fantasy work,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. I do for role playing games. I've done some video game stuff. Um, and I'm starting to get back into comic book work. So, but I do a lot of commissions and things like that.
That's awesome. Well, what is the comic book project you're working on at the moment? Or what's the plan? What's coming on in the near future?
It's going to be a sword and sorcery. It's going to be in Comicsgate, of course, but it's going to be a sword and sorcery kind of book, kind of in the vein of Conan the Barbarian. But we're going to do we're going to do it a little bit differently. I
Mm-hmm.
want to really explore the hero's journey. If you've ever heard of that before, that's kind of lacking in comics and adventures and stuff lately. And the main character is a barbarian, and it's going to be, she just so happens to be a woman, but in the story, I'm going to write it where you don't care about that,
Mm.
and that's not going to be a focal point.
Yeah.
And then her people get wiped out. Um, she's the last one of her people, and she makes a series of choices and mistakes early on that basically have larger ramifications later. And it's just about finding your way in the world and creating your own fate. It's called Doom Fate,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the working title right now. I got about I got the story all written out. I got most of the almost all of the pages thumbnailed, and then I got about 10 pages sketched out. So
All right. And is this like how big is this book?
it's going to be about, I'm shooting for 50 pages.
Oh,
It's
awesome.
going to be more of a graphic novel type of deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be in black and white like the old Conan books.
All right. Yes, with the Savage
Uh,
Sword of Dragon kind of stuff. Yeah.
yeah, that kind of the
Awesome.
Basima stuff. That's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
really highly influenced by that. And I plan on doing, if we get past a certain amount, I'll do a digital painted version of the book that you'll be able to get.
Oh, I see.
if we go past, and then if we go past another mount, I want to do an ash can that's like the old Conan magazines.
Right, yeah.
I want to do a version
Like a
of,
giant format kind of thing?
yeah, the giant format.
Awesome.
So that's the plan. But I have 2 coloring books that I'm going to be doing first,
Mm.
and the one releases next month.
Hmm.
And I'm gonna Indiegogo that. It's a fantasy based book. So it's got dragons and unicorns,
Right.
and then after that, the next one's called Coloring the Undead. So it's all gonna be like zombies and horror stuff that you can color.
What's the name again on that one?
It's called Coloring the Undead.
Oh, Coloring the Undead.
Yeah, and activity book.
All right, good. Awesome. I mean, okay, when you said coloring books, I was thinking colored comics, but it's actually proper coloring books. So you're basically
Yeah,
doing the
right.
right. So you have, okay, cool.
I've released a couple already, so this will be.
It is an interesting thing to see starting to see popping into the market all these coloring books aimed mostly at adults or and anyone else, but not necessarily kids. You know, like zombie theme comic books and ultra violence theme coloring books. It's interesting thing. It's a modern phenomenon, isn't it? I mean, I never seen coloring books for adults unless it was stuff for knitting. It used to be available for ladies back in the days. So I think it's a very newish kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, my monster one is going to be for mostly like young teens and up. Like maybe if it's a comic book audience, it probably could be the same thing. And then I'll have some pictures that like the little ones, if you tear them out and give them to, like a little kid, they could color them. So they'd be like a unicorn or, a fairy or something like that could color. But there's going to be like scary monsters in there. So for the little ones, it'd be a little too much. But
yeah,
but there'll definitely be a good choice of pictures for everybody, all ages.
Awesome. Got Constantinos here with us. Constantinos Prokios. You have I swing past your surname. I'm sorry. I try my best, but I have to.
You did very well, actually.
Yeah, I kind of try to be pretentious and pretend I know the accent. And I can master the accent. So
at least you try.
I do it quickly so I don't fumble in it. So, but you got already a comic out, right? Which I had an interview with you here in this channel a few months ago, and you released your first issue of a series of comics, and you wanted to plug your issue too, isn't it? So let me. I was just pumping up the sound of Passion for Drawing, but I was actually sharing him while he was speaking. So let me just. I can move. Just gonna go. Oh, your microphone is fine. I just needed to bump it up a little bit.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna go on KP now and fix the camera on him because he's doing some handwork here.
Oh yeah. Well.
Go ahead with it, man.
Well, we talked actually back in November. I had my first book out, my first issue. Right. Now the second one is out since January 16th. Mm-hmm. It's a bi-monthly edition. So my series is like a 12-issue one, and it is called Steel Cat Metal Team, is the name of the duo of the protagonists of this series. It is basically the story is about this humanoid called Steel Cat, his cyborg partner called Timothy Vince, aka Metal Team, against a horde of monstrosities known as nightmares. And this is the very basic concept, but it's kind of more complicated than that because it's a futuristic story as well. It takes place in the city of New Glory towards the end of the 21st century. It is connected to a universe of at least 7 more titles that will follow in the future. So it's kind of like it has many more aspects than just good guys versus bad guys. And readers in this series can see like the development of the characters, their backgrounds, their connection to each other, discovering the true nature of their opponents, and and the variety of other characters that will appear, either as allies or villains, and of course there will be the respective twists and surprises. So this is basically, in a sum, what I could say about this book. And it's not like through a campaign, it's being published through an indie publisher in Los Angeles called Rising Sun Comics. And yeah.
So you had your first issue released back in November, wasn't it?
Yeah, and both
How
in
did that
digital.
went?
It went good. Okay, it went good enough to continue, and it's the books are available both as digital and in physical format. They are also, the first book is already in some U.S. stores, and in one in New Zealand soon. And
Really?
yeah, and we look forward to maybe distribute it in some other U.S. stores. And the same will happen with the next books. And there are some things discussed behind the scenes that maybe will make bigger things to happen about it. And when things will be certain, I will make the respective announcements.
Right. Well, that Rising Sun label, I had a look at their website. They have some neat titles there, and you were also talking to me about another title, isn't it? Do you remember the title of that one? These guys that come from space. It looks like Bebop and Rocksteady.
Yeah, sure. They have a Kickstarter campaign, and it ends on February 17th. It is called Armadillo Justice. And it is basically anthropomorphic superhero story. Really cool, especially for younger audience and for fans of this genre as well. And I definitely encourage people to go check it out. It's reward tiers, And I'm sure, my editor would like to talk to you as well. So I hope you guys can meet and, have a good chat.
Yeah, well, I know. Send the invite anytime he wants to come on. I had come across that particular book before somewhere. I don't know where, but I had seen it, and yeah, it looks funny. Looks fun. They got a good artist there, and anytime those guys want to come on, it's cool. So, well, it looks like they're treating you well. They're giving good exposure to your book there, since it's in a few comic book shops. And that's more than a lot of indie creators can ever aspire to. I mean, your book is actually in the shops and it's sponsored by a publisher. That's awesome.
I'm grateful, and I'm learning. Like my editor serves as a mentor too. He teaches me stuff through our Skype sessions from time to time.
Right.
So this is very cool as well. And right now I'm working on the fourth book. I'm doing the coloring and putting the text on the bubble through my software program. So in order to submit this as well to the editor, I have already finished some pages from this. I will, if you want, I can show you like one or two without spoiling much.
You're doing everything by yourself, isn't it?
Yes. Writing, illustration, all the stages.
And your colors are digital, isn't it? Same as your.
No, they are handmade at first, and then I enhance them or do corrections through the program.
Yeah, that's it.
For example, this is really traditional here. It's not yet in the computer.
Right. Yeah, you had explained that to me before. I just didn't remember just off the bat. Just to interrupt you there for a sec, just Carl just joining in. I hope you can hear us.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect. Just bumping your sound up a little bit as well, but coming in loud and clear, that's fine. Just giving you guys a bit of a boost because my microphone is too close to my mouth sometimes.
And now you sound like you're underwater.
I am in the water. That's the other part. I was going to reserve that for the ending. I'm in the plan. Anyway, Carl, you're okay, man?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good, very good. We're just going over Constantino's art here. He's got a book out at the moment by this label called Rising Sun Comics. That's the right one, isn't it, Constantine? Rising Sun Comics.
Yeah.
There's some guys based in
Los Angeles.
Yeah, California, right? And Constantinos has it's a 12 issues.
Yes.
Maxi series, isn't it? Yeah. And you're currently but you're going on a one by one kind of process with these guys, with these publishers. So they're they're always waiting for numbers on the sales before continuing the series, or they're gonna publish
Yeah.
the whole 12 issues no matter what?
Hey, listen,
Quite a commitment, man.
we certainly currently move forward to publish the first four and maybe launch a campaign later for a volume. This is still in conversation, but it's a possibility. And according to how this will go, maybe I can produce some spin-offs or something in between to attract even more interest, or or just explain some more things in the story. We have a variety of scenarios like in the back of our heads, just for any kind of occasion that will come up. And by the way, I also see a question there from someone. I think it refers to my characters. And it's
I haven't even looked at the chat yet. So
What's with the tails? Is that like a genetic characteristic of demon hunters or something?
Oh, no, it's like the first guy is a humanoid. He's manifested like that in the story. And we see that in the first book, how. And as to what's his nature and, his connection to his creator and to these monsters he's dealing with, it's all explained throughout the series. As for the other guy, his tail is metallic. It's like a cybernetic implant along with his right hand as well. And also, readers will see throughout the books how he got to have these implants on him.
This is a complicated story, isn't it? I mean, it's got a lot of layers to it, isn't it? It gets into metaphysics. You were explaining to me most of the arc the other time, but that's what I got from the pitch. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Am I in the right place?
Yeah, you got it very right, actually. Yeah, I would say.
To do with genetic manipulations, like gave me a feeling of like a Gattaca kind of thing. You know that movie Gattaca
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman. Kind of give me kind of some ideas of it. You know.
And I like this kind of stories. I think they reveal things little by little, and yet they still keep the interest for something maybe bigger to come later. And they never. Usually, this kind of stories personally never make me bored. They make me anticipate even more, and I want to create this kind of feeling.
Hey, Carl, how are you with Deathsworn, man? You're going on to issue 3, isn't that right?
Yeah. I'm back on issue 3. I had some. I know I was pitching issue 3 months ago when I did your first stream, but yeah, I'm back working on it. I had some work I had to get done out of the way, and now I kind of restarted it. I redid the cover and sort of wanted to have a completely different mindset going into it.
Oh, is this the cover?
No. This is page
No.
3.
I've seen your cover. The cover is this low angle POV, isn't it? Kind of with the guy, with the hero swinging his axe at this other guy, with the guy with the goggles.
Yeah.
Which I forgot his name, but I think it's that guy there, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, this is like
That's it.
at this part in 3, it's sort of like a weird mind trip into Deathsworn, and so he's being shown things that are like possible future outcomes, past events in his life and all this stuff. So this is like a possible future outcome.
Oh man, your vampire woman there, looking very much like the Mars princess from John Carter from Mars. That's beautiful, man. That's great.
Oh yeah. I was going for something like that, because that's sort of it's
super juicy.
Yeah, it's like Deathsworn is just all that stuff for me, like all that stuff I like Conan meets space fantasy meets whatever,
Awesome.
So yeah, that's like, she's obviously taken on some sort of queen aspect. Deathsworn is all super buffed out, even more buffed out. Has a beard, he's missing an eye. And then Dominic Danger, who's like the comic relief in the story, has this sort of skull muzzle on him, and he's sort of like his knight that's just standing by, like.
It's getting better, man. It's getting better page by page. This Dominic guy, once he actually takes his helmet off, is quite dashing. So it's interesting that you're making the comic relief nonetheless. And Deathsworn seems to be going through it seems to be going through the wars, basically. Lost an eye, he had his beard shaved, isn't it? Or that's part of a flashback, I presume, isn't it? Because I saw
Oh
that
yeah. Well, that's the whole part of it. He's sort of, he's basically at this point he's just being tormented, you know. So he's this is sort of like a manifestation of all his sort of suppressed emotions, you know.
oh, I see. He's
So
not,
that's why he's like has this harem of women around him, and he's sitting on a throne, and he's all scarred up, and he kind of,
awesome. Kind
and
of
then yeah, then it flashes back to some past stuff just to fill in some details. It's one of those things like Deathsworn is like the most reluctant hero ever. I'm constantly trying to find ways for him just to not cut off the other cast members' heads, you know?
Mm,
So if you kind of wanted to give some exposition or give some background or give some past, you have to go inside his head.
mm-hmm. So it's like, is it a complex story for you to deal with? Are you finding it easy to tell the story? I mean, on the page side, on the art side, obviously you're having a ball. It's great, but on the story side, exposition and whatnot, are you happy with it? Lo- are you liking the way it's going, or are you struggling with some parts of it?
I kind of I struggle with it a lot, and then I get to the point where I really like it, you know?
Hmm. Draft by
So
draft.
yeah, but yeah, sort of draft, but I'm always kind of doing it on the page. So even like you were talking about exposition, like characters giving exposition, I'll just write out like a ton of dialogue just to try get to where I need them to go, and then I know I can cut like 60% of that, you know, because
Hmm.
then I can figure out the way to twist it and turn it and to get to where I need it to go, you know.
That's right.
But apart from like I heard Passion earlier talking about the hero's journey, like that's like all my stuff, you know. Like I've been mad into that for I don't know since I started college like 3 years ago. So that's like I always had the basic 5 issue structure of it, you know.
Yes, which
But then
is
it's like it's knowing what to cut out and what to change and how to make it better. Sometimes it's like one of my favorite things about that, and I'm like working with the limit of the pages is you can take a scene that you might have thought was 4 pages long, and then it would have added up to like this other scene towards the end of the story, and somehow you end up like smashing the two together at the start of it, or it ends up being placed somewhere you'd never think, and you're like, oh, that works out so much better, and you only would have thought of it coming out that better because of the limitation, you know.
absolutely, and that's actually interesting you bring that up because I know you mentioned before your series is 5 issues, at least to start off, and so is my series, and I've always had this debate. She's a debate worthwhile having, of the 3 issue or three chapters or 3 acts story structure against the 5 act story structure, um, which I forget what is the actual name of the 5 act story structure, but it's akin to plays, the old Shakespearean plays. I think it comes from there, but it's been given another name, a more modern name, of the guy that defined it, which I forget if he's a playwright or a writer or just a novel writer. But there is a 5 act structure, and the hero's journey. It's got the five basic elements of the hero's journey. So the hero's journey is basically usually,
Freytag's Pyramid.
I can't remember. I mean, obviously, if you go to Joseph Campbell, obviously, it's when he constructs the hero's journey in the Heroes of a Thousand Faces. He does present it in the five chapters or 5 stages, kind of a narrative dramatic structure. It's constructed like that, and I've always found that to be a more um, a more precise way, a more correct way to kind of spread out your story, to introduce all the elements, and then there's a couple of highs, a couple of lows, and then you got the final resolution. But the 5 chapters is usually what I use for my story. for my stories. Well, unless I'm doing kind of a quickie kind of thing just for fun, then yeah, it's just either one-off, a one-shot, or a 3 issues series. But for something with a little bit more meat in the bones, I've always referred myself to that five act structure. But maybe you have more information on that, Passion. You were saying something about that, wasn't it?
Well, mine usually, I mean, the prime example of the hero's journey is, you know, that in the Iliad and the Odyssey, and basically Star Wars too was based off of that heavily, and King Arthur is a big deal. So usually what you do is you have someone who's destined to do greater things. He goes on a quest for whatever reason. He meets a mentor, someone who's going to help them, and then goes through a lot of adversity, learns some things at the end, and then becomes stronger and defeats the overall quest or evil villain or whoever you want.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's severely lacking. My twist on it is they really haven't had, you know, they always talk about in movies and stuff, strong women characters, and very few of them actually go on the hero's journey. I could probably only count maybe some on my hand that actually have had nice arcs and storylines like that. You know, you got, you know, Ripley from Aliens, and Sarah Connor, and you know, there's very few, like Xena, if you watch the whole series, is kind of like that. And there's Buffy the Vampire Slayer. There's very few who kind of go through that arc. And
Scarlett O'Hara goes through that arc.
Yeah, Scarlett O'Hara too. Yeah, that's probably a good one too.
A proper one, isn't it? She really goes through all the grind and all the effort.
Literally a war. Yeah,
absolutely.
So that's severely lacking in how women heroes and everything, because automatically they put them in movies and comics. They're automatically superheroes. They don't have to do anything to earn anything. They don't go through any adversity, and they don't have anybody helping them or anything. So,
that's a modern kind of heroine, isn't it? It's a bit contrived, isn't it?
Yeah, but people don't even really care. I mean, look at Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman, the movie was pretty good, but that movie's not about her.
I didn't like it. I enjoyed it for a movie, but I don't think it was a movie that Wonder Woman deserved, to be honest. I think there should be something else there, something more.
What was about Steve Trevor? He was the hero in that movie.
Yeah.
He had the hero's journey. He crashes on the island, gets off, meets someone who helps him along the way, and ends up sacrificing himself and being the hero at the end of the film.
Absolutely. That's right. Yeah, that goes through the line.
You could take Wonder Woman out of the movie and it'd be fine.
Yeah, she's absolutely a kind of a slate. There's nothing there. She's a blank canvas, isn't it? She's almost like you said, she's almost like the mentor to Steve Trevor, but and you kind of wonder why the story starts with her. It should start with Steve Trevor and end with him, because that's pretty much his experience, isn't it? It's pretty much his evolution as a character.
Right.
It's pretty weak.
She has no real character growth in that film.
Very little, yeah. I mean, she has an evolution in terms of the techniques she uses, you know, for in terms of fighting abilities and discovering her physical powers, but in terms of emotional progress, there's very little there. I mean, what she discovers something about humanity, but I believe she already knew that in the beginning, isn't it? She was always interested about her history and the history between the gods and humans. So, what is there in the end that wasn't there in the beginning? One wonders, isn't it, dramatically speaking?
Right, and she basically, the most she does is she's kind of the fish out of water character. That's as most as you could give her if you wanted to be generous. But you know, she has some cool scenes, and she gets to beat up on men and all that stuff, and I think that's what people want to see. But Wonder Woman's such a cooler character than that.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting that out of all the female examples you had of the hero's journey, they were all about uh, motherhood. Like their dragon was the mother. Like Ripley, it's about the confrontation with like the sort of evil stepmother. Who else was it? What is your name?
Sarah Connor and
Yeah, her as well. It's all about.
I think Ripley's probably the more fleshed out of all those characters, isn't it?
she's had a few movies.
I mean, she not only she had the biggest amount of movies, she actually, or the movies allowed her to go through a complete arc, isn't it? I mean, she even gets resurrected in the end because she's such a great character. They have to bring her back, isn't it? Because she does go through the whole process.
Well, I mean, in the first Alien movie, she's basically the sheriff from Jaws. I mean, Alien is just Jaws in space.
Yeah,
And she's basically the sheriff where no one's listening to her and people are making mistakes, and she's the only smart one. So you could literally change, and that's what I like about Ripley in that movie is that you could change. It doesn't matter that it's a woman. No one really cares. You can interchange the characters. In the second movie, she's the voice of reason, kind of that motherhood kind of thing, like you said. And then at the end, she steps up and is a hero to defend, But she doesn't go. I'll tell you what, Ripley in the second movie, she could care less about saving anybody else but the kid.
well, actually, Ripley is quite self-sufficient from the get-go, from the Alien. I mean, she doesn't even, correct me if I'm wrong here, she doesn't even act actually as a mentor, so to speak, like in the traditional hero's journey kind of way. She has allies like Michael Biehn in the second movie, Aliens, the
ship and
but he's more of an ally than a mentor. But the thing is that her self-sufficient is not in your face. It's learned. I mean, it's earned. And she actually has, especially in the second movie, Alien, she really goes, she has a low point. Like she starts the movie with her hair still long, like it ends in the first Alien. That's the hairstyle she has in the first movie. And then after she goes through the process of having to deal with the corporation and having to be relegated and not listen to it, basically. She goes and chops off her hair and becomes like this commando chick. And it's a really low point in her life as well, because the whole thing in the script that Cameron cut is that she has a daughter. The daughter obviously lived her life without her there while she was lost in space, and so she has that emotional baggage. So she's not she's a self-made character, but she's a character that went through the emotional grind to get to where she got. She's not like a Ray kind of character. I am, I know everything. No. She goes through the process of having to deal with it, to learn it. It's a sacrifice, a personal sacrifice. It's a great character, and that's why Ripley, although it's a self-made woman, is a very interesting and rich character,
Yeah, and they would totally do Ripley as a different character nowadays. She would be Superwoman. She would be smarter than all the men. She would doesn't make mistakes. No one's going to tell her what to do. She doesn't have to listen to anybody. She knows all. That's how they would do it nowadays.
It would most likely be like that.
And that's a shame. I think, and that's why people are so bored. I like strong woman characters in books. It doesn't have to always be men and stuff like that. Women have their own strengths and things that they can do, and I just think Hollywood and comics and stuff like that are doing them a disservice by not focusing on those strong traits.
I mean, I was I don't know if you guys watched, but I was watching the new Tomb Raider the other day. Lara Croft, the new Lara Croft, with that girl, that actress from Ex Machina.
Mm-hmm.
That actress, I think. And I just, it was an incredibly boring film. I mean, nothing to do with the character herself. It's just the movie was just you didn't do anything for me. I found it. I don't know if you guys watch it, but
No.
it took a long time for it to get into the actual good bits, and I couldn't care less for the scenes leading up to it. It starts off with Lara training in London, and then she goes off into this bike race, which looks more like a 5-7 minute sequence of product placement of London streets and London cars and bikes, brands, and things like that. It doesn't add anything to it. It's actually poorly shot, in my opinion. But that was just a pet peeve of mine. And then he goes on to the familiar story that we already saw in the video game and in the previous movie. She's the daughter of this rich guy, and father dies or disappears. He inherits all the secrets and the money, and then it just becomes like scenes of Indiana Jones, which you already seen. But none of it was. I literally fell asleep. I didn't know what to do with the movie. Honestly, I didn't even finish watching it, if I remember well. I just didn't do anything for me at all. Did you guys watch any of that?
No, I haven't seen it.
No, didn't bother.
No, I can't remember the last like modern movie that I watched. Honestly, I think it actually might have been The Last Jedi.
Oh, right.
I fucking like whenever I have a chance to watch a movie, it's like a classic oldie, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I went to go see that movie at a midnight showing, The Last Jedi, and I was groaning and laughing so hard at that movie that people started to like get mad at me. Because the movie was so dumb. I was like, at one point, I was like, dumb, stupid.
Oh.
And then people started to get mad at me.
Are you saying out loud?
Oh, yeah, why not? So dumb.
You're acting like Robert De Niro in Cape Fear, yeah?
Not that bad.
Smoking your cigar.
Oh, hey, counselor. No, I was
right. If you do that ever, film it, and I will share that link, yeah?
that.
Well, wait a second. You guys must have watched Infinity War. That was back in May. So that was
yeah.
You
That
forgot
actually was the last one.
that saves the honor of the honor of the convent. That saved the area. And come on, that didn't got nominated. That's a great movie. And it's actually genuinely, it's a corporate product, but it's actually a very good movie. I mean, those guys, the ability of those two brothers, the directors, actually coalesce the whole thing and make it work over 2 hours and a half. That was actually very good. I was very impressed with it. And nothing. Any nominations for that thing? Special effects?
They got special effects. Well, they'll give it to the next Avengers movie.
You think so?
Yeah, because what they'll do, they did that with Lord of the Rings. Remember, Lord of the Rings got nominated every year, but it didn't
That's true.
So I got a feeling Black Panther might win this year.
You think so?
I think so.
I mean, against all the other movies, Black Panther is going to win the Oscar for Best Movie of the Year. Is that what you mean?
I think so.
It was. I gotta say, it's one of their weakest films. It's one of their weakest films.
I'm not saying it's a good film.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I think it's going to win.
I think it's probably just a nod in that direction. I don't think he's got.
That's African American writer, director.
Sure. Oh, the guy had his previous movie was excellent. I enjoyed the what's it called, the Rocky sequel.
Yeah, oh yeah, I mean he's a good director. They're hyping the movie up to be like it's the first African American led superhero movie, which is not true.
Absolutely not.
Of course not.
I remember raving about Blade back in 1988. It was a great movie. I actually forced my friends to go and watch it because it was that good. I watched it twice while it was in the cinemas. It was a very good movie, and I missed Black Panther in the cinemas. And when I watched it back at home, I really thought to myself, "Man, this is weak." Really, I mean, They had a couple of weak movies. I think the first Thor was weak. Doctor Strange could have been better. It was better than Thor, better than Black Panther, but it could have been better. I mean, Steve Ditko, uh, you know, uh, imagery really should be put to good use. The film was a character. They make him too lovable from the beginning. I mean, Benedict Cumberbatch, whatever his name is, he's too much of a nice guy. That was not Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is a complete dick in the beginning, the origin story. And even after that, he's still a mysterious guy. He's a very, down to himself guy, a close-up character. And he only starts warming up later on in the 70s as the series continues. And I think the movie didn't pick up on that. He starts off as basically a nice, mildly annoying guy, but that's it. And again, it's only 15 minutes with him on the screen before he actually has the accident and then goes on his journey of self-discovery, which itself is not very long at all. There's too much. That's the movie they could actually have spent a little bit more on the backstory, a little bit more of an hour until he actually gets to start learning how to do stuff. But they cut corners. They go straight to the good stuff, to the audience favorite moments. It's a pity because they could have done more of a dramatic movie with Doctor Strange. We missed an opportunity there, but Ant-Man was also a little bit weak for me. I prefer the second one actually, the Ant-Man and the Wasp. But Black Panther really I didn't really even like the visuals. Special effects were a little bit crummy. All these CGI humanoids jumping around, Black Panther fighting.
Is it just me, or is Lewis coming in a little bit garbled?
Yeah, it kind of goes in and out, right?
Is it?
Yeah, you're garbling.
Yeah,
halfway through your sentence, you start to garble. It seems like when you're
like you dunking your head underwater.
Yeah, man. It's I tell you, I gotta take this water mask.
Yeah, I thought the visuals of Doctor Strange were boring. Like, I thought everything about that movie was just like, I don't know why everyone, like, it was pitched like it was going to be this big acid trip, and I was like, nothing in this is stuff I haven't seen before, and even the whole like Asian influence to everything, I was like, ugh, the costume looked like he was wearing a bathrobe, like a denim bathrobe.
I like Doctor Strange. It's one of my favorite characters, but he's hard to do, and I think they did the best they could with what they had to work with at the time. I mean, I thought the battle with the bad guy was actually one of the most original.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I've ever seen. I mean,
yeah, that was when I was like, why wasn't the whole movie this sort of crazy? Like that color and that look of everything, and that whole when he sort of was floating from these different weird platforms. When he goes up to Dormammu and he's like jumping from these little weird Steve Ditko shapes. I was I was like, why wasn't every part of the magic this? And instead of like these weird sort of Buddhist mantra
they gotta get easy into that. Like the next movie from the next Avengers movie, from what has kind of been released a little bit on accident, is they're doing they're going into the quantum realm. I think that's what it's going to do, and then that's going to be one big trippy. They're working up to that. They got to get the audience ready for that kind of stuff.
Well, what do you think they're going to do with Doctor Strange now in his solo movie? Next solo movie is going to happen.
I thought the next bad guy is Nightmare, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
What about the other guy, the devil guy? What's his name? Mephisto. Is he going to show up?
I don't know. I mean, if you do Mephisto, you have to do Ghost Rider.
Yeah.
Right. Well, isn't Mephisto part of the... Isn't he with the Fantastic Four license? Because now that's back at... that's going to be part of Disney, isn't it? Because they eventually they did purchase 20th Century Fox, right?
Yes.
Yeah. No, they have Ghost Rider. Yeah, because he was in Shield.
Yeah.
Oh, they always had Ghost Rider, yeah, because Ghost Rider was with Columbia, isn't it? The rights after the last Nicolas Cage movie, we did the second one, right? Nicolas Cage. So after that one ended, the rights reverted straight back to Marvel. I think they only had like that was it. That was the end of the contract. The problem with Mephisto, though, I think it's part of Fantastic Four now, and that was with Fox, which is Silver Surfer, the Galactus, and all that stuff, all the auxiliary. So,
Mhm.
what do you think they're going to be taking Thor next? Is he going to do another movie?
Thor.
Yeah, it's going to be.
I don't think there's going to be another Thor movie.
Yeah, man. I like Thor is one of my favorite, like probably my favorite Marvel character, and I was actually really excited for Ragnarok, and I don't get excited for like any of these movies, and I really did not like Ragnarok. Like
Me
I
Like you?
no,
No, I
I
didn't.
liked I was just like just put it on mute and let me just look at the pretty pictures and
Wow.
stop having these people joking. And
Yeah.
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 it was so every character was inconsistent into what their personality was. And like I couldn't tell who was the comic relief because everyone was the comic relief.
All right.
It was the funniest tour movie with the most at stake, you know?
Mhm.
And then when Infinity War came out and they just sort of uh walked that character backwards. Like they took every single part of his development and just were like, you know, like the whole idea of losing an eye, it's a very like it's a ancient like character development idea, you know?
Absolutely.
It's from ancient Egypt to even Nordic myths, and
Yes.
those guys never met. You know, it wasn't like the Celts and the Romans, like the Vikings and the Egyptians never met up, so their myths never influenced each other, and it's the same sort of idea of the father figure that's blind in one eye, and it's supposed to symbolize like uh
Wisdom.
becoming more sort of one-sided, having your eyes more on the sort of prize, on the goal, on what you need to protect. It's sort of grown up in as a character, and
Yeah,
they
it's
just sort of redid it because Rocket Raccoon pulled an eyeball out of his ass and gave it to him. And I was like, I literally like put my hand in my head in my hand at the cinema. I was like, oh
well,
god,
it's not like Thor in the movies anyway has ever followed the Nordic mythology anyway. They kind of
yeah.
threw it with the
I
first.
mean, not even in the comic, but it's not even a part. It's not even like I don't care about it as a part of that. I care about it as a part of like character development.
Mhm.
That like you could have showed that he's maturing, you know, that he's not just gonna piss arse about the galaxy, you know. And
Well, that was
it's
kind
like,
of the first film, but yeah, I agree with you where they kind of just went back on him, where he's just this half-assed. Because of the first film, that's what it's all about. It's about him. He's just a stupid kid. He's still effing around. He doesn't want to take any responsibility. And then at the end of the movie, you know, he's got to be worthy of the hammer. And this movie, they kind of do the same thing.
I actually enjoy Thor 2 very much, actually. Watching it a second time. First time I thought, okay, well, she's just filling the contractual obligation to do a sequel to Thor. Obviously, they got to do 3 at least. But watching it a second time, I actually thought, it's actually okay. You know, dramatically works, visually is good. I think the villain is weak, the premise is weak, but, you know, as a movie, is okay. The only thing I can ever stand in the first 2 Thor movies is that woman, the love interest. Natalie
oh
Portman.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a complete blank slate. Another blank slate.
I mean,
like,
she's a blank slate in the comics,
yeah,
you know.
Well,
Like she's not really any use.
yeah. It's not a Lois Lane or even a.
I
Uh,
mean, the whole thing about Thor, really, like one of his biggest weaknesses, especially in the books, is that he tends to just fall in love with any woman that looks his way, you know?
hmm,
Like that's the thing, and there's always like, you know,
indeed.
crazy Asgard sorceresses that are coming down to Earth. What's it? Not Earth Realm. What's it called?
Midgard.
Midgard, yeah, they're coming down to, and they're trying to make him fall in love with him and get him to drink a poisonous ale and
Yes.
stuff like that. You know, like that's one of his big weaknesses, and they should have probably played on that more. That you have this big, strong guy who's actually just like he's actually just like a puppy dog. You know, he just kind of will sort of fall head over heels for anyone that looks his way. You know.
Hmm.
That would have been way more interesting than they kind of flipped that, you know, where it was like there was just no heart there at all, you know.
Well, I got to say, in defense of Ragnarok, I did find the movie looked great. It did
Yeah,
look great, and I mean, in terms of being a kind of a more comic driven movie, comedy driven movie, I think in that aspect it worked. The scenes were kind of funny. They were enjoyable to see through. But fair enough. It's not a proper Thor adaptation, isn't it? It's, like you said, he's got a bit too many jokes for some people to be able to
well, it's
enjoy
not
it.
like I like jokes, you know. It's just give me that character, you know. Like I
Hmm.
thought that the rock guy was hilarious,
Hmm. Hmm.
you know. I was like, oh yeah, keep him in there. But just it's like it's this thing with the movies I see more and more now, where they confuse style with tone, you know, and
Yeah.
so they go, uh, it has to be a funny movie, and so it has to be super colorful, or it has to be a super colorful movie, so it has to be super funny. And it's like, no, style is different from tone, man. Like, take it seriously, you know. Tell me that this is a world that I have to go into, like, and be worried about these guys.
Could it be also a competition with what Warner Brothers is doing? Um,
Yeah, yeah. Well, they had the whole thing for a while where they were like, it has to be serious, and so everyone has to be like schizophrenic, you know, like everyone has to be suffering from mental disorders. And if Superman's costume ever looks blue, we're gonna just black the whole screen out and just play the sounds of people dying. You know,
And then
yeah.
look,
like
and that was funny, and it made a lot of money. So obviously they're gonna double down on that.
they made what did you say, Aquaman?
Yeah, Aquaman's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, I actually thought Aquaman looked more like it was it looked like, I know they always have to clip, I haven't seen it, but I know they always have to clip the parts that are like the one-liners for the trailers.
yeah,
But from any of the battle stuff I saw, I was like, oh, it looks like they're really taking it seriously. Like this is
oh
like
yeah, that kind of stuff. But it's definitely like Jason Momoa is like the comedy relief through half the movie. You don't take him seriously. He's like Thor in Ragnarok, where he's just cracking jokes and everybody's serious around him, and he's just the butt of the joke. And then it's not until the end of the movie things get a little serious, or if there's a fight scene, just like in Thor Ragnarok. But the images of the movie, it looks spectacular. It looks great.
yeah, I thought Ocean Master looked cool. I
Mhm.
saw
Yeah,
like they made his mask actually move. They were like, screw it, we're just gonna make it move like in a comic, you know?
yeah. Black Manta was cool looking.
Aquaman looks great. I think the movie again is. I think he's really trying to please a really low age crowd, like teens and kids. It's a family movie basically, but it looked great as well. But I think that's what they were trying to do with Ragnarok. They were really trying to pump up the jokes and kind of the colors, so you would distance the whole Marvel franchise would distance itself even more from the Warner Brothers, because at the time, so Ragnarok was 2017, right? So we had just come off the Justice League and Wonder Woman, right? I mean, all the movies that Snyder produced, so the whole first three movies, they're all very dark. I mean, visually speaking, they're all very dark. Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman, and then he produces as well the Wonder Woman. It isn't directed. That's also a dark movie. Apart from the scenes in the island, the scenes in the island and the mascara, they're colorful, but everything else is very dark.
Right.
Especially that final final confrontation. I mean, they actually have to make the whole movie very dark because the special effects are so bad in the end. In the final scene, they're so bad that they really had to put that knob of the darkness all the way down, so we couldn't see how bad the special effects were, and they still managed to screw it up. Everyone can see how bad the special effects are, and oh, of course, Suicide Squad. I think Snyder also is actually produces that, and that's also a dark movie. It's
Yeah.
dark in themes and dark visually. But I actually enjoyed Suicide Squad, believe it or not. I think the editing was a little bit choppy here and there, but it was not that bad actually. And then obviously Snyder had to quit editing the Justice League, and Joss Whedon came in, right? And
Pretty much redid most of the movie.
And bye. Yeah.
He
I've
wrote-
seen I've seen comparison shots of what Snyder had shot. I mean, in terms of the not the rushes, not the dailies, but the final effects shots, and they were again they were timed, they were color timed to match these other movies. They were very dark, and then the final result was quite colorful, and definitely Justice League was a very colorful movie. It looked fun. It didn't work as a movie, but it looked fun, and that's I think where Marvel was with Thor Ragnarok. They really wanted to pump up the colors and the humor, so to kind of make the difference between them and the Warner Brothers movies even more than they had done up until then, because they were clearly
They mostly went by the success of Guardians of the Galaxy and how you could do a space movie and put a bunch of comedy and people will flock to the film. They think that that's the reason why. And so they started putting a lot of comedy in all their films. I mean, if you look at the second Captain America movie, the Winter Soldier movie, that movie's really serious. I mean, there's maybe one or two jokes in that whole film, and that's a really good movie. So, but then you get into Civil War, and there's a bunch of jokes in it.
Mm-hmm. You are right. I had forgotten about the Guardians of the Galaxy. Actually, yes, there might be more.
So Civil War, Guardians of the Galaxy, and then Thor Ragnarok, they were filming that movie or writing it right when the second Guardians came out. And they were like, oh, all right, people love this formula, bright, colorful, funny main character, funny stories, and then that's what they went with. They also got a comedy director, of course, but they're just going to do that. So then they moved that into the Avengers movie because they were filming that at the same time. Hopefully a lot of people criticize the last Avengers movie. I do agree that Thanos was the best in that whole film because the movie's pretty much about him. He's the main character, and he actually has a hero's journey in that film. He goes through a lot of heartache and problems, and he succeeds at his goal in the end, his quest to wipe out half the universe, and he succeeds. And all the things he goes through with it, and that's why people are so captivated with him now.
Absolutely, yeah.
But all the other characters in that movie, the so-called superheroes, they're all disposable. You could switch them out with just about anybody, and no one would really care. But they're all cracking jokes. The only one who's really serious is Captain America and like Black Panther, the kind of the leaders. But everybody else has, they got some smart ass.
I mean, how good was The Winter Soldier? That really was a page turner. By the time, I was really impressed by it. I thought, well, this is a ballsy script. It was the first time those guys had done a movie like that, and the Russo brothers, and I'm like, wow, that was great. I mean, Robert Redford as the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the turn at the end, the guy's Hydra, and the whole Hydra is in control of S.H.I.E.L.D. That was very good, very good script, a very good movie. Like you said, a serious movie, with a serious theme, and but he's a proper superhero movie as well. I mean, the hero is a proper superhero. The guy, obviously, you know he's gonna win, but it's a tough story. It's how you gonna win over these guys. They're all over the place. So it's a very good movie.
It's a good movies.
And
we'll see how Captain Marvel does. I'm not too
Nah, I
I'm
don't
probably
have
not
much.
gonna see it, but
I don't have much hopes for that, man. I don't think it's going to do very well, to be honest. I think it's not going to be a flop because these movies, obviously, by now, it's such a franchise that there's so many people around the world. You know, it's like buying a product from a brand that you know. You know, you go to the supermarket, you got Coke, and then you got unbranded Coke. So obviously, you're going to buy Coke. So it's the same thing, with Marvel. You're going to arrive at the cinema and people are they're gonna buy tickets for it. But I gotta tell you, he's not gonna leave well, that movie. In a couple of years, nobody will remember it. That's for sure.
yeah, I think it's going to be in the lower tier of Marvel flicks.
Oh, absolutely, it is. By the trailers, there's nothing there that saves the movie. I doubt very much they got a more flashed out product than the one that presented in the trailers. I mean, unless they're really saving a lot, unless they're really keeping you in suspense, for I mean the crawls. The scrolls is a good idea, shapeshifters and all that. So maybe they can make something fun there, visually fun, visually interesting. But besides that, the hero is a nothing. I mean, the way she's portrayed in the movie, there's nothing there. I mean, in the trailers, there's really nothing there.
That's what they're going to do with. They're going to introduce the Skrulls, and they're going to do the Skrull thing, the invasion.
Mm-hmm.
I got a feeling like
the Secret Wars. The Secret Wars.
No, the invasion where they had the Skrulls had actually secretly been some of the superheroes all along.
Yeah, I think that was a thing in the comics. It was called the Secret Wars, no? After
Secret Invasion.
Secret Invasion. Yeah, you're right. Secret
But
Invasion.
there has been I think there's been 5 Secret Wars.
Yeah, sure that. Yeah.
But I think this is just, I have no proof of this, but the Iron Man that dies, Tony Stark that dies in the next Avengers movie out in space, that's actually a Skrull. And they're going to set that up to okay, you find him dead and you find him that he's actually a Skrull this whole time. And that sets up a whole nother series of movies that you can do.
Well, I'm thinking they're going to have to retire these actors soon, isn't it? I mean, these guys already had their due. They did 4, 5, 6 movies each. I mean, Downey Jr. is already in 8 movies or something, isn't it? By the time this year ends, so these guys will eventually. I mean, they will eventually be too old to be playing the parts, even if they'll be quite happy to carry on there. So what they're going to do? I presume they're going to find some way to introduce new actors for these roles with some sort of excuse. Maybe the Skrulls is that because they're shapeshifters, isn't it? So what, Skrulls are going to take their places, like good Skrulls?
Right, you could switch out the actors that way. I thought they were going to do like a time travel, switch things up, but I think you could do it with Skrulls. You can also notice that Marvel in their last movies, with a lot of the older actors that already been in the movies, they've been doing a lot of de-aging technology. So that's basically them saying, hey, all right, Robert, we know you're getting old and you're looking old, but we can de-age you for the film if you want. So you can come back when you're 60, 70, and still play Iron Man at 45. So they're working. That technology is going to be a thing where old actors could come in and play younger roles.
That is true. That is true.
Obviously they won't be able to do the physical stuff.
Yeah.
But you can, that's easy to do. You just transplant a head onto a stunt woman.
Yeah.
I mean, I think 90% of the Marvel movies now are that. Robert Downey Jr. is always talking about how he's never there. Like, he's not there for most of the shooting.
Oh, yeah.
Especially with stuff like Infinity War, where it's like, one guy is doing like a Broadway show and another guy is signed on to a TV show. So they just shoot it with a stand-in and then plop the head on later on. What I think will be interesting is when you were talking about the actors doing the younger stuff, getting de-aged, is what about when the technology gets to the point where these guys can just sell their likenesses?
Well, that's been going on for a while.
No, no. I
Back.
mean, yeah, I know people do that with like Bruce Lee, and I know someone owns Brando's images for Godfather type stuff.
Yeah,
But
that
I mean, like when they're alive and they're like, you can, here's a digital pack of me, and
Digital
you
pack.
can just have this and download it and put me in your movie,
A
and I don't
deal.
have to act.
A
I don't think
DLC.
actors will really do that, but they want to actually be, because then you get into where someone can say, "Hey, here's a pack of where I act just like Clint Eastwood," and then you could just put his face on everything. So
Mm.
I think we get into a weird. They're not going to want to do that. But I mean, there will come a time where actors will be somewhat obsolete, like um, especially for these superhero movies. But the superhero movies won't last forever.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. But
They're like westerns, so
isn't that technology of the face, the digital face? I mean the de-aging and all that. Isn't that still a little bit difficult to pull off? I mean they've done that for a few movies already, but
yeah.
it's a bit expensive
Captain
at the
Marvel
moment, isn't it?
with Samuel Jackson, I think it looks really, really good. It's
Yeah,
almost impossible to tell.
you think that's digital de-aging, or is that
It takes
Samuel
place.
Jackson in makeup?
No, they put dots on his face while he was filming,
Uh-huh.
and then they used that to de-age him. And
I
I
didn't
think they
know
looks
also
that.
like, I think they also like they sort of like paint in the hairline, or like they'll sort of give him a little hairpiece to sort of bring the hairline down to where it would be.
yeah. It's they're getting way better with it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. I mean, they did Kurt Russell look good when they did Kirk Douglas in both those films. It looked good. That
Yeah,
they didn't
Kirk
have.
Douglas looked okay. Kind of. He looked a bit like Carrie Fisher did in that model of Carrie Fisher in Rogue One, though. A little bit.
Yeah, that was kind of their first shot at it, but it still looked decent. And then it's just been getting better. And with Samuel Jackson, he looked like he did back in the '90s during Pulp Fiction and stuff. I mean, looked pretty close to me.
Yeah, that is true. Apart from being a little bit heavier.
Okay, guys, I gotta go.
Okay.
But yeah, it's kind of late here. But thank you for having me. It was nice to meet you guys as well.
All right, KP. Thank you
Okay.
for coming.
Yeah, thank you again, and I'll see you in the future again.
Do you have a Twitter?
Of course, yeah. My Twitter is @Kostas with a K 7911.
Odd.
Kostas with a K 7911.
Oh, and before you go, just pitch your book again. So, just tell us the name and where we can get it.
Well, I have I give the links to go directly to the order page of the publisher's website throughout my media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and you can find it in risingsuncomics.com website and specifically Rising Sun Publishing division page. But I give the links throughout, my accounts, all the posts, the latest posts have these links, and you can find me throughout all these accounts, DeviantArt as well, YouTube. I have KPR channel on YouTube. I put drawing videos there, and a Patreon as well.
Awesome. Okay, so Rising Sun Comics anyway, and it's actually in the comic book shops. So yeah, we're gonna have to. I'll drop in the link for that for the publisher. Okay, Rising Sun Comics on under the video.
Sure. Thank you, and see you again. Okay.
See you later,
nice.
man.
It was nice
Bye.
meeting you.
Yeah. Well, likewise. Bye.
Bye bye. Hey, anybody knows what do I have to press to get back to the screen? Always goes to the guy that is talking, because while I was I've kind of fixated this in the beginning.
Yeah,
After I introduce you guys
you just click on yourself again.
on myself.
Yeah, if
Okay.
you click on yourself, if it's
And that's
on you, then you click and then it goes off.
And then he goes off when anyone else is talking, right?
Yep.
Like they call it white box. So like if someone has a white line around them, you just click on it again and it'll deselect them and it should bounce back.
Yeah, it's not bouncing back. He's fixated on me. Like you were talking now, Passion for Drawing was talking, and he's still just showing me. That's a bit I don't understand why it's happening.
Oh no, it was showing him on mine. It
Yeah,
doesn't show. Yeah. I think you have to look on
Oh,
your YouTube or something. But he
yeah,
came up on mine.
yeah, but not on the actual live stream. I got a live stream on a big screen in front of me, and it just doesn't matter what happens. It's just wherever I click on, that's where he goes to. But it's not supposed. When I screenshot, when I present to everyone a particular guest, once I unpresent, it should just go to default, and it doesn't.
correct.
That's the thing I can never understand. He does this with my streams, but everybody else's streams that I know, this feature is exactly as it should be, the way I described it. But with my streams, it's never works the right way. So if I just go to Passion for Drawing, and I got to present him to everyone, and that's the only way that he stays there. See, that's the only way he stays there. So if you guys
Yeah.
actually go on the
And
stream,
And actually, right now when we're on ours, I just see your screen. I'm not popping up. Oh, there it goes. It's flipping now.
yeah, it's flipping now. Yeah,
It's weird.
well, it's flipping.
Maybe that's how you do it.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's flipping because I flipped it. So if Carl says something, I go to Carl. Like I'm like a DJ, basically. I'm flipping around, but I'm doing this manually, basically. I just cannot ever go back to the default thing where it just, let me just see if I. No, it's not here. Okay, maybe we'll go now. I'll just won't say anything and for 10 minutes and let you guys talk so I can test this because I pressed something now, so it might work. I'm not sure. So tell us more about your upcoming book, Passion. Your heroin sword and sorcery kind of thing.
Let me pull up a page here for you.
Awesome.
Let's see. I have so much stuff here.
Is that all yours? So that stuff there that you're showing in that folder there?
Oh yeah, I have tons of stuff.
All right, so you've done quite a few things, like a few avatars that I've seen going around. Oh, this is cool. This is great.
Yeah, so I'm reworking this page a little bit, but her costume, I kind of went a little too hard on the grays, but
This is the one that's going to be black and white, right? With just a digital color.
Yeah, this is just the lines right now, the sketch.
There's a giant there, isn't it?
Yeah, she part of her thing in the barbarian tribe. They're in this big caldera valley called Valerium, and her name is Valeria. She's named after the valley. Her father is the blacksmith, and she wants to be part of the guard that guards the valley, which is like the most prestigious warrior position you can be in the village. But the village elders basically choose when you become of age. They choose what your path is going to be, what your fate is going to be, basically, and they use a little bit of magic and other stuff to decide that. And she decides that she gets determined that she's just going to be a maiden for the rest of her life. And part of it is a little bit of bigotry where a woman has never been part of the guard. But they teach all the denizens of the place to be warriors. They all know how to fight. They're all, it's a basic, now it's like learning how to walk in this tribe. So they're all taught how to fight, but she really wants to be part of the guard. And when it comes to that time, she gets denied. They basically said, hey, you're just going to go off, be a baker or something. And she doesn't want that. But then one day she gets attacked, and she gets the ability called It's called the Doom Fate, which is basically a berserker rage.
Mm-hmm.
And then she ends up killing her attackers, and she brings their heads to the thing, and they reluctantly make her part.
Mm.
And unfortunately, one of those guys she kills is like the top warrior in the village, and that later comes and causes this effect. There's this domino effect, and it's so they're out on patrol, one of their patrols, and the guy here on the left, he's kind of a jerk. He's like the old curmudgeon, and he's also kind of the Merlin guy too. He helps teach her later, but he doesn't really believe in her, and so they're out there and they run into a giant's cave, and he kind of lets her like, oh, okay, well, we're not going to help you, and take care of it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of leave her to try to fight a giant on her own, and she ends up killing him pretty good. Let me find another page here.
You're gonna have a series of creatures in this story, or just a giant?
Yeah, the first book's going to have some giants. I'm doing a big thing with orcs. There's a big orc. What's going to end up having a big orc tribe comes in and wipes out their entire village while they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
And
I like orc. I like the Hulk with sharp fangs.
So this is her like trying to talk to the giant, like, oh, try to parlay with them, and they're kind of back there, laughing at her like she's gonna, and he just totally smacks her and shoots her into the snow.
I like this. So zoom in on this one. I want to check out the top panel.
Sure.
Cool.
Sure.
He's pretty big, the guy, isn't he? When she gets close to him, she's really tiny.
So she's here and they're back there like, oh, handle it on yourself. And then the next panel here is like, he's like, get out of my cave. This is my area now. And he's like, I'll squish you. And she's like, go F yourself. And he, clobbers her flying into the snow.
Mm.
And then the next...
Oh, wow.
And then the next...
A lot of the shapes you're using for hands and fingers and faces and stuff remind me of Joe Mad.
Yes, he's a little bit of influence. It's cartoony too.
Yeah, no, that's great.
A bit of it, yeah. I noticed that. Notice that with the first page, yeah.
Yeah, especially in the first page, the axe and the sort of the way the fingers wrap around the axe. I was like, oh, that shape. It's like that real
little raised eye,
cartoony but fluid sort of.
Yeah, there's a little cartoon stuff in there too, and Joe Mad and early comic books and
Joe Mad. One of your guys has been an influence.
Yeah, he's definitely been. I mean, I liked his kind of Western anime style.
Yeah.
My style. I'm trying to go for like a current cartoony, realistic style.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because that's what I was noticing when looking at your stuff. I couldn't read Joe straight away, but there was hints of something there. So it's obviously you're kind of going astray from that, doing something else, something more your own, obviously. But well, it's good. It's good to see the Joe Madureira's lines there. Influence of his lines there is good.
And my favorite comic artist is Arthur Adams, and so a lot of my stuff early on was inspired by him. And other fantasy artists, there's an artist called Wayne Reynolds, who he's a big time fantasy artist. I'll find this other page. I should probably organize this stuff. But he's a big influence on my stuff too. God, where did I put it?
So how many pages you see? You did explain in the beginning, but my memory's crap. How many pages you said you're working on? Is it 40-something pages or 50 pages?
50-page book.
50 pages, right.
Yeah, broken up probably into 3 chapters. I don't know where I put this other page. I must have saved it.
3 issues, yeah?
No, it's going to be one book.
Oh, one book, yeah, okay.
Got it. 6 graphic novels that are all themed. The first one's Origins. The second one is Quest. The third one's
Mhm.
Revenge. The fourth one is Redemption. The fifth one's Destruction, and the sixth one's Ascension. So
Yeah. Well, the whole hero's journey steps, isn't it? That's good. But how much you said you got of this one complete already?
I have about 10 pages, kind of all loosely
In this stage, isn't it?
not in this stage, but they're all just kind of starting. They're just squiggles right now.
Layout stage, yeah.
It's nothing really nothing great I can show, but here's like one of my concept pages. Like, so after that scene, she gets knocked into the snow. She basically just goes into all rage, and she jumps. She jumps into here to jumps off a snowflake, and she's gonna it's gonna be a battle axe actually, and it's gonna be pretty bloody. She's gonna sink the axe into his neck, and it's just gonna be a series of chopping and blood, and then at the end.
This is actually a page, or it's just a sketch? This is
a sketch, but usually I can just copy and paste it and put it into the.
It's going to be a full bleed page, or is going to be another panel there?
It's going to be like a half. I can't find it. It's actually already in the page. I can't find it right now. Like I said,
what I was trying to get is, what is your speed with doing this? How much of your free time can you dedicate to this project? Are you working on it daily, or is it whenever you have time?
Right now, it's whenever I have time, because I have 2 other projects that I'm doing first.
Yeah.
And this one's, like I said, I got it written out and I got it pretty much thumbnailed. I'm just working on a couple of the parts in the ending to flesh out. And then it's just a matter of penciling and inking it all. I'm not a sequential artist. I haven't done sequential in a long time.
Right, yeah.
So some of it is getting reacquainted with drawing that way, because I do, the comic book artists would just call them pinups.
Yes.
But they're not pinups, they're actual pieces.
Yeah, doing like concept art and character pieces, isn't it?
Yeah, and a lot of concept work and things like that.
Have you been approached by any of the up-and-coming writers that need an artist? Are you doing anything for anyone?
Nasser asked me, and I turned him down. There's been some other people who've asked me, nothing I could really talk about. A lot of it, especially in Comicsgate, a lot of people are really excited to get their projects going and get it done, but they don't have a plan. They don't have funding. They don't have, you know what I mean?
Well, they have no experience.
So here's a painting, kind of a quick painting I did of her so far. Just concept work on her.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're working on, trying to get her where I want her. But no, they've come to me. I've had, 5 or 6 people. But I told them, get a budget. I work a little bit differently. You got to come to me, and I need to get paid while I'm doing it. I don't do stuff for the promise of getting paid. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And because some of the guys working on books right now are they're actually hurting right now.
Yeah.
Because they don't have any money. See, and then I'm doing a series of demon books. They're demon sketches. So these are all going to be different demons. I want to do a book of just Masters of the Underworld. So they're just going to be these decrepit looking demons. I've already done about 20 of them.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of you go everywhere on social media, Facebook, and I don't know if am I gargling still, or am I coming through clear enough?
Right now you're clear.
Cool. I just added one more microphone, so that might have helped. Yeah, like I was saying, there's a lot of guys you go on Facebook and Twitters and all that, and these all these folks, suddenly they just they're comic book writers. So you're like, well, some of them say aspiring comic book writers, but other ones say comic book writer. And then I go around and look around. Obviously, some are people that have taken the hobby of writing, and over the years have developed a little bit of something to show for, and they've approached artists. But it just seemed like very much. I noticed this. I don't know if I'm correct, but I've noticed this feeling, and it's kind of a rush to the gold hill, to the gold mine. Basically, all these guys are suddenly approaching any artist out there because they want to rush with a project. I mean, they haven't had any experience. And fair enough. Anyone trying to do that, I mean, deserves a little bit of attention and respect and all that. But I think, and this is the part I don't know if I'm correct or not, because I've always done my own stuff. But I think that it's a little bit. A lot of these people don't realize that it's a little bit difficult to do a project, and it's not that easy to approach an artist, one especially that does this full time, and obviously this is his bread and butter, and they cannot just. Well, obviously it's a little bit difficult to understand. How can they imagine they can just approach someone because they simply have an idea and they want to do a project, and all that is fine. But these things are not. There's a time frame that has to be respected and a budget that has to be obeyed, isn't it? And you cannot just create a project out of nothing. You cannot just approach someone or a team, and then suddenly you have a comic book done in a couple of months. It's a little bit more complex than that.
Yeah,
So,
I know a lot of writers are not necessarily visual people, so they think that you just take a pencil, you put it to paper, and they don't kind of realize that there's a little more to it than than that. And then I know some people, they want to wait till the work is done, but you need to pay people out the money as you're going along. I think some people in Comicsgate, they're paying them like they turn in 5 pages and they pay them. Turn in 5 pages, they pay them. That seems fair. But when people come to me, it's like, well, I want to put it on Indiegogo, and if we get money, then you can be paid, but you need to do the work now. It's like, no, that's not. I don't have time to do free work.
that's impossible. Obviously,
I gotta eat. I'm a fat guy. I need food.
The only thing you can do. But again, I mean, going back to the basic principle. I mean, you can call yourself whatever you want. Obviously, if your guy wants to call himself a writer, he can. But one thing is a guy that works at leisure, just as a hobby. He punches some keys on a keyboard and he does a 5 pages or a 10 pages or 20 pages, whatever he wants. But that doesn't mean he has mastered storytelling, and let alone visual storytelling. There's a lot to be said about it. I mean, the reason why some books work and some other books don't work is because, and actually when Carl was in my stream a few months ago, we screen shared his issue 1, and I was actually pointing that out because in these pages there's a clear and defined sequential streamline, and it's difficult to achieve that. It's not just any person or anyone that knows how to write the story doesn't necessarily knows how to write the story for comics. You need to understand what you can do on a page, how much you can do on a page, and then obviously you have to multiply that for as many pages as it is humanly possible to do a book. And then you got to think if it's going to be a floppy issue, or if it's going to be a trade size book, and the format as well. Sometimes the American format might not be the correct one for your story. You might need something else, like a manga format, maybe a European graphic novel format. So these things are more complicated. I see all these literally kids, coming out of the woodwork saying, "I'm a writer. I'm a comic book writer." Well, hold on your horses, dude.
Yeah.
It's lovable. Sorry?
It's the collaborated process for me. So I'm used to doing my, someone gives me an assignment. I want you to draw blah, blah, blah. and I want it like this, and then we do changes and we move. It's a collaborative process, and then I get to know people first too before I work with them. I don't just jump into and it's a business thing too. It's when I ask people, it's like, well, you got contracts and stuff? No. Well, you got to get that going first, man, before we can even talk about who's going to own what's going to do what. And people think that, people like my art, and I'm happy with that. Obviously, I have a lot of clients, but to do a comic book is at least a 3-month commitment. I pretty much would have to move everything off my schedule to do it. And me, it would be there's a little bit of a learning curve. I've done sequential before, trying to break in the comic industry, but it's been a good 10 years since I've done this kind of stuff. I'm rusty, but I think I'm pretty good. I think I can do it. But like this page, I started to ink it, and then I realized things are not stylistically are not where I want them. So I have to move some things around, and it's that's why I draw in digital and I ink in traditional.
Oh, really?
Yes. So I print these out and I ink them.
Oh, okay. I thought you were doing that one in particular. I thought that was it. Once you lay down those lines, that was pretty much the ink stage of that book there. So you're gonna
this is all gonna be inked by hand.
All right. You're gonna print this out
later I can sell the pages or whatever I want to do.
You're gonna print this out in blue lines, yeah, and then
Correct. Yes.
ink over it. All right, cool.
Yeah, it's I have a large format printer scanner.
Yeah, well, I love it how it's going, and it would be interesting to see what other projects from the comics guide bunch you'll be working on next. That'll be interesting to see that.
Yeah,
it's becoming a very it's becoming a very big batch of books in this area of the market. I mean, the thing is that with indie books, I mean, it's always been a struggle, a war. I mean, independent comic books have always been there for a reason. It's nothing new. I think a lot of people is just starting to discover indie books. Like it's something that just started a couple of years ago. It's been there all the time. It's been there as concurrent to the mainstream comics, as an option to the mainstream comics, and also as an opposition to the mainstream comics. Not just to give alternative art and stories, but obviously also to compete with the mainstream. That's the thing that is important for people to understand. There's this up and coming batch of writers and all that. They're starting to contact artists and all that. They've been doing these things for 10, 20, 30 years. They got to understand what an indie creator is and how does he work and what's the process. You don't. I think a lot of these guys are thinking that this is suddenly they just found a golden eggs chicken, basically, by thinking, oh, this is great because the mainstream publishers are not giving what people want anymore. So I'm just going to arrive on the scene, jump on the bandwagon without any experience, get myself some sort of penciler or inker that's going to do what I say, and suddenly I have a bestseller in hand. Well, it's not exactly like that. It's the reason
you got to do a lot of marketing. You got to do a lot of networking. That's why I'm on this show. See, what I'm doing what you should be doing. A lot of people, like you said, come in, just said, hey, give me an artist, let's go, and put out a book and expect to make 6 figures in this community. But what you got to do, they're doing it wrong. First, you got to make a name for yourself in the community. Show them your art. Expose them to who you are and what your art is. Then you get them to buy your book.
Absolutely.
And because part of the problem was why it all started was because these creators were being all political and stuff. People want to know who are making these books first now. They don't just put a book out and then no one knows who you are. It's going to be the opposite. They need to know who you are, and then they'll buy your book, or they may not buy your book. So personality.
It's not just that. It's also like humans actually have like a basic need for reciprocity.
Yes.
And so it's sort of like there's this new way of giving before someone gives back, you know? And that's kind of what these shows are, and getting on Twitter and having a laugh and having fun and not being mean or trying to isolate yourself or try to be like the crater at the top of the hill, you know? It's like you can only give so much to someone for free, whether it's entertainment or interaction or previews of your work or whatever, before they actually are compelled to give you something back, you know?
Yeah,
And that's an instinct in like not only humans but animals, you know? Like rats will only wrestle so many times before they let the other one win, you know, before they let their wrestling partner win.
I guess I have to give them a product they want. So I'm hoping people are into the sword and sorcery thing. I want to be kind of the Conan and kind of doing it with my style. And hopefully people will dig it. But it has to be my best work too. So I'm not rushing it.
Yeah, people are really into the like that sword and sorcery sort of fantasy stuff, because I put up just a couple of designs for I was gonna do an Irish mythology book, and I was planning on doing it before I started doing Deathsworn, my current book. And so I had a ton of designs and stuff, and I put it up, and people really sort of like looked at it. Like I put it up in the summer. I put up a couple of designs, like, hey, here's an idea I had, and like 2-3 weeks ago, someone reposted them in a thread that people were looking for, you know, specific type of books, and they were like, I can't wait till this comes to Indiegogo. And I'm like, I have no plans for that. Like, I have no plans to do that book.
Yeah, like I haven't really showed these pages too much on Twitter or anything like that. On my Twitch channel I have, but I haven't really showed them to the Comicsgate people too much, because I want to put my best foot forward first. And before I'm with this kind, like I said, I'm kind of like Ethan that way. Like I feel that this book has to be perfect. It can't be half-assed. So, or as they would say, they're half-arsed. It has to be right. So,
yeah, that was one of like a couple of, it would have been around October, towards the end of October. I kind of had some, and I was working steadily on this chapter 3 here that I'm doing, and I was working steadily on the thumbnails and planning it out and everything, and some like shit went down over here where I was banned from a convention, and then people were trying to gather shit on me to write an article and stuff in the Irish comic, sort of the main Irish comic sort of news outlet.
Yeah, how did that ended up in the end? You were mentioning that the last time that you were about to go into that kind of thing. So did you manage to do the article? How did it end?
Oh, they just, oh, yeah, actually yesterday I saw it. They put up a post where they were talking about other things, and they said something about how it was at that event, the one that I was banned at, they were talking, and due to a lack of proof and the opinions of people that they really like, they won't be writing any article about it. They didn't mention specifically what it was, but they were like, we won't be writing an article about it. But then they went on to say, like, but if we ever catch me out for drinks, you know, don't be scared to come up and ask me about it. And I was like, oh, okay. So you just admitted I'm not this big meanie. Like, you just admitted that I'm actually just cool and easygoing on all my media, but you're completely willing to keep up this whisper network. And
what did they want to ban you for? Because of Comicsgate stuff, or?
Yeah, it was sort of like, it was right before I think Richard left, and he retweeted some of my art, and I think it was like they start looking at who people were following, like in the Irish community. They just start stalking people's follows, you know. They kind of put out a thing that they weren't going to, I don't know. It's all just mental stuff.
Yeah, you're over it. Yeah, I get it.
You know, I got a message basically one day from someone that is an old school Irish comics creator, you know. And I'm like one of the youngest. I'm 21. And these guys are all like late 30s. So I'm like the freshest of the fresh blood, you know? And
That's really good what you're working on, by the way.
oh, thanks, man. But so this guy messaged me and he was like, "Hey, I need you to answer me honestly. Are you part of Comicsgate, or are you a supporter or something?" And I think any kind of question like that is stupid, you know? Like I was perfectly happy just to go about my merry way, not be explicit about anything, and just try to gain the largest amount of followers based on merit, you know? Like I was never open about any of this stuff when it was even happening to me publicly, like on Twitter, because I was like, I don't want to be that guy that's like everyone pile on these guys, you know? So I was just kind of happy to go my way. And when I was faced with that question, I was like, okay, so I can either bow to the will of these collectivist Puritans, or I can say, I don't care what you think I am. I'm not whatever you think I am, whatever you're making up, whatever you want to think people that feel like they've been shit on in comics, whatever you want to feel like they are, they're not. And I'm not going to bend to your will. Like, and that's what started all this stuff. And ultimately that was actually what ended it, because I kind of worded everything pretty nicely, you know, in a way that was like, you can't prove me to be the kind of boogeyman you want me to be, but you know that I'm not on your side either, you know?
Why would these guys in Ireland have any dog in the race? I just don't understand why these
Well,
people feel outrage.
Ireland, especially Dublin, is very like everyone seems to be like drinking Kool-Aid over here, you know?
Yeah, the whole of Europe is like that at the moment. I mean,
England's gone.
oh yeah, it's infested by these liberals here in London. And if you go to Spain, where Canales is, he was here on the channel as well. He often speaks about the problem. If you go to his YouTube channel, he often speaks about the problems he's having back in his home region. You know, but I don't understand why they would be in the art circle. Why would be some guy so worried about who's advocating for what is mainly an American thing, basically, an American mediatic thing, you know. I don't know.
From an American's perspective, on the other side of the pond here, you know, it seems that like we're getting hit with all this, you know, stuff over here. You look at it through a European lens, but when I look back at Europe, I think Europe has it a lot worse. You guys just don't know it yet. You got the European Union pretty much controlling everything, and you know, they're putting limits on internet stuff, and they want to start their own army. France and Germany just basically re-signed a treaty where they're basically, you know, going to defend each other and things like that.
And no one else?
Pretty much. And make sure that they're in control of the EU. This should be all worrying to everybody.
Yeah, well, but the problem is here that people don't care here anymore. You see, people are here.
That's the history of Europe. What happens is you guys over there, you all don't care for about 50, 60 years.
Yep.
And someone comes into power, and then America's got to come bail you guys out.
you know why that happens, yeah? That happens because the life cost here, the cost of life here in Europe is so elevated that people on their day-to-day lives, they're just worried on how to put the bread on the table, you know, and they have to ignore the rest, you know, otherwise they won't have time for anything else. That's the problem, that Europe put it itself out of the market, you know, by being so expensive, you know. No one can afford a proper living in Europe, you know. You literally, here's the place you literally need to have 2 good jobs in order to be able to just get by,
Well, your guys' mistake is you keep letting Germany be in control of things. You let them get too powerful this is the third time. And,
Did you ever hear that Norm Macdonald bit on Germany?
Yeah.
Hey, how about we don't let you guys be a country no more?
I mean, it's probably a good idea. It's been going on for 100 years.
These guys are very smart. You know, politicians and the lawmakers and the economists and the capitalists here, they're very smart. What they've done was, since the end of the Second World War, was, and even before that, was, you know, we're gonna just leave everyone eternally as working class. That's it. And left wing's ideals, obviously. We're gonna leave everyone as working class, and the middle class here is the upper class. There's hardly a middle class.
No, that's going away too. It's like here in America, our middle class is disappearing. That's a big fight over here, where there's either the income disparity is getting worse. You're either poor or you're, you know, I don't make a lot of money. You know, I'm an artist, but I don't expect to make a lot of money. But my wife and I, we're like the low end middle income. We're like the low end. So it's and you know, my parents, you know, they're solid middle. You know, my father was a mechanic, my mother was a nurse, and they were solidly middle class. They could afford a house, they could afford 2 cars, they could afford, you know, all kinds of extra things. But at the same age, I'm almost 50. I don't even own a home. So
yeah, but that's what happens here. I mean, I got friends in their 40s. They live in rented rooms in houses of strangers. They can't afford anything. It's Europe. That's what they've done.
Yeah, same here, especially in Dublin, man. Like you cannot live anywhere by yourself in Dublin, you know?
Yeah, you gotta have roommates, you gotta have
and like really successful, I know really successful people, like uncles and stuff, and they're still like living as if like they're in college, you know, like with all these dude roommates. And you're like, just because they need to be in the city. And even here, like I'm kind of slightly out in suburbia, like it's right up at a hill, you know. I'm close to a graveyard, close to kind of suburbs. But in the past 5 years, literally every single field around me is being filled with council estates. Right. And you're like, it's like, oh, there's no why are we getting rid of the green, man? Like, that's our thing. And you're not even replacing it with something that is the ideal or needed, because there's a housing crisis, but it's you want to preserve the ideal, you know. People don't want to be living in those situations, you know. So keep the field there, because people need the fields, you know. The kids need to have somewhere where they can go and fight each other and play and, you know, get away with doing whatever they want to do. And instead you're kind of putting them in with these just houses that are block on block on block of each other, you know. There's no space to move.
Yeah, we call that urban sprawl here in America. It's called urban sprawl, where they go outside the city and then they just start tearing everything out and just suburbs and just build rows and rows of homes just so people can live there. It's called urban sprawl here.
That's perpetually what they do. Perpetually, the welfare state. You know, they put you in, they take away your chances, then they put you into debt, and then they offer you a way out, which is to be dependent on them. That's it. It's a circle. It's a vice circle. You know, you never get out of that here in Europe. You're perpetually in that. So that's why people don't care anymore. You know, people just want to get to the end of the month with A, not sleeping on the streets, and B, being able to eat, at least. You know, they probably want to have hot water or electricity, even in some parts, but, you know, at least they'll have those 2 essential things, and then they just got to work for it, you know. So what can they do in terms of public opinion? You know, their public opinion in Europe is almost absent, you know, because
I think Europe is, I think in the next 20 to 30 years, Europe will fall into war again. So hold on to your hats. I think what the European Union is doing, it's just a power play by certain countries, and Germany's at the head of it. And It's not going to be pretty. I
It's also
just
because
don't like what's going on over there. If I like history, and it doesn't look good.
yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not looking good, but it's also because there's always the immediate threat of Russia, isn't it? I mean, Russia is still a power player. I mean, you still cannot trust them. You know, they're right here on the doorstep, and they can always go left or right with those guys. You never know what the current guy is going to do, or the next one might even be worse than him.
I don't think it's going to be Russia. Russia's just they couldn't sustain a war. They've had 2 wars with Europe in the past 100 years, and they couldn't sustain both of them. They have mass losses, and they would never do a third one. I think actually the war is going to come within Europe.
That's true, but Russia could always try to take some of their old states back, like for example the Baltic.
They're already doing that, yeah.
Yeah, well, the moment they go into one of the Baltic states, one of the Baltic countries, then they basically declare war against Europe. You know, it will be another Second World War. You know, with the invasion of Poland, it would just be basically the same thing. So
I think they would go after Denmark or something like that.
Well, yeah,
first, but they needed Crimea, because if they didn't take Crimea, take it over, they would not have any. Russia would have no ports in the Black Sea. So it was a strategic. I'm not saying it was right, but from their point of view, they would have been boxed in navally.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to do that.
But now, after that, they're going to say they need a presence in the Northern Sea. And then after that, they're going to say they need a presence in the Mediterranean. And it goes on, you know, the list goes on. You know, that's why they're constant.
Look at China, too. China's building those islands. They're coming our way.
Yes.
Here. And they're coming and they're circling Japan. They're doing all these other things. And you know, and we're all too worried about comic books and other things, but people need to look at global politics right now. It's things are moving, and people have to pay attention a little bit more, because that affects the whole world.
Yeah, well, China, as soon as the Second World War ended and the Japanese were defeated, China became immediately the next threat with Korea.
Yeah.
And obviously then with all the wars in Southeast Asia, so Vietnam.
I mean, and America's having problems. I mean, we're not perfect either, but we're not going to fall apart. We've been through wars. We're not shooting at each other or anything like that. And I doubt it'll go that. My personal theory with America is why we have all this strife right now. I think it's outside countries influencing it, because what's America's greatest weapon in the world? It's our
comic books.
Well, you're right. Partially, it's our culture.
That's right.
Our culture is the strongest thing that we've given to the world. We've given the internet. We've given comic books, rock and roll music, movies, cars, all that stuff.
Texas isn't going anywhere, but California might.
But saying, well, what if you're an outside country? It's hard. We got the #1 military. We have nuclear bombs, so you can't attack us, and we're kind of isolated, so it's not easy to attack us. So you can't really take us out that way. Financially, we're on top, so you can't really try to bankrupt us. So what's the other way to do it? Is go after our culture.
Yeah, it's always the weakest.
Well, that's what that former Soviet Union defector said. What was his name?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I know what you're talking about. Yes, that's what.
Is it Yuri something?
Yuri something. Yes.
Not Brezhnev. He was like he was the leader of the kind of desocialization, was it? You know. And I remember, because I've watched Soviet Union news reports of America. Mm-hmm. And they were from the 70s and 80s, and it was basically what they were piping in to try tell Russians and the USSR about America, you know. And so they were, you know, it was all propaganda. Every story was twisted to make it look horrible, the worst thing ever. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of thought, because basically the entire world is super exposed to your entire media now, like the US media. And when I was looking at that, I was like, there's very little difference between this old Soviet propaganda and current news stories in America. And I was like, oh no, oh God, they're doing it, you know, like,
Hmm.
and that truly is that, like, the world sort of actually survives based on the sort of the unification of the American people.
And who cuts off their internet and their outside world to them very much, and that's China. So what they're doing, I think China is pushing a lot of it because they want to be top dog, but they don't want to go to war with us because they got to make money off of us. But I think I think the European Union. I mean, a lot of people don't understand just because the Cold War was over, that doesn't mean communism and that socialist stuff went away. It didn't just go away overnight.
Oh yeah, and even if it doesn't survive as an economic practice, the theories, the
Evolve.
ideologies behind it, you know, the
Right.
Marxist ideas, they certainly survive. You know, they have sort of, you know, that's the thing when you were actually talking about over here, about why we would have this division in the comic scene over here. It's like there's no comic scene over here. Like the comic scene is the art school Marxist scene, you know, like the dudes that make the weird, well, not even dudes, the majority of them are women, these older women that are kind of dropped out of art school or completed art school and didn't go on to do any real illustration work, that make these kind of, you know, crappy zines. They are the comic book scene, and they've basically hijacked the word comic, you know. And so when you go to like a comic mark or a comic whatever, I'm really the only guy standing there with a book that is like, here is the pure, you know, Americana comic book, you know. Everyone else is like, here's my book about, you know, stick men drinking cats and coffee and stuff, drinking coffee with cats, you know. And like they're like, the whole art school scene is just Marxist to the core, you know. Our main art school over here, NCAD, they actually promote themselves based on the kind of the decadence and the sort of the mix match of ideas, and everyone who goes there has to dress like they, you know, they got dressed with their eyes closed, and they all have to be high, and they all have to take drugs, and they all have to commit to this scene of like just pure Marxist, like there is no ideal, there is no right way to go about things, nothing is objective, you know.
And that's it. That hasn't gone away. A lot of people don't know Angela Merkel. She raised on the east side of the wall, the Russian side. She went to Russian colleges. She went to Russian things. She was not part of when the wall came down. She did not participate in those protests or anything because she was. And then a lot of the people who are in charge of the Russian government, they're old school East Germans. And then you also throw in the fact that basically Russia is not communist anymore. It's an oligarchy. They don't like that. They kicked out all the communists. It's when history books are written like 50 years from now, I think it'll make more sense. But there's people writing and really, really, Marx was born in Austria, so I don't know.
He died in London, though.
Yeah. I mean, Stalin, like the reason why Russia became communist was during World War One to destabilize Russia because Germany was losing to Russia badly on their eastern front. They sent Stalin and or no, not Stalin. What's his face?
Lenin.
They sent Lenin and all his crew over back to Russia to start a communist regime. They sponsored it. They gave them money to start the revolution over there. So that's one of the early forms of government sabotage, where they wanted to do a regime change, kind of deal. And the Germans, they sponsored it because that was the only way to stop the Russians.
That's right. By the way, Carl, just going back to the thing you were saying about college, How's your relationship with your teachers going? Because I remember you telling me you had you were having a spot of trouble there.
Oh no, well I've been out of college since I only went to like I don't do well in any of those things like school or any like people stuff. So I got like a
I don't think any
degree
of us
course.
do.
Yeah,
That's why we're sitting at a table.
I got a degree course in like model making because I was always into that, and I got a 2-year course in illustration, and the second year there was supposed to be a comic book module, so I was like, let me do this 2-year course. It was cheap. I was like, and
Right.
then if I like this college stuff, I'll go on and do it. And so I've been out of that for nearly 2 years now, I think.
And they trashed your work, wasn't it?
Oh
The
yeah,
liberal
they
teachers.
trashed me. And it was because
Unbelievable.
yeah, well, they were like for the comic book module, we got the teacher wasn't into comic books at all. In fact, like what I was told was that she was an old school animation teacher who basically couldn't keep up with how animation was being taught and how it was progressing. And so in order for her to keep her job, they said, we need you to fill up this vacant space, which is comics. And
They
so
have a saying. They have a saying here in the States. It's called "Those who can't teach."
and those who can't teach Jim.
Yeah, that too.
And
Same
yeah,
for film reviewers, isn't it?
yeah.
You're right. They can review movies.
And so I came in like, and I was like, I've always done comics, always wanted to do comics. And so I kind of was like, had my first class and I was kind of super into it. It was the only thing I would like really shine at. And I was like waiting a whole year to do this. And so I was constantly like interrupting and talking and stuff. And I came to realize like this person doesn't know anything. Like they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're doing. And then they were like they came back to me with the brief for the year's work in that module, and it was newspaper cartoon they wanted us to do. And so I basically like threw a fit. I went to my year head, I went to the year, like the people who oversee that entire course, and I was like, look, we're not doing this. Change this. Like, let me do the comic book. I want to do more work. Like, let me do that, And so we eventually changed it to the point where if you wanted to do comics, you could do comics. And it was like a whole year you had to produce pages. And so I was like, dude, I can do that. And like, I can do that in a school week. I can do that, And
Mhm.
so we had to, over the Christmas break, we had to thumbnail 3 pages of our comic. And I came in after the Christmas week off or whatever, 2 weeks off with 3 completely finished, colored, lettered pages, printed out, high glossy paper, A3 size and print size. And I was like, yeah, I'm done.
I
And
see you really triggered her, man.
oh my God, man, it got to the point where my year head and that teacher basically like had a meeting with me where they pulled me into their office and were just like, you just need to shut up and do what's on the brief.
Jesus Christ.
And I was like, okay, just let me
God.
get away from this. So I produced like another 6 pages of that. And that was actually the start of Death Sworn. Death Sworn was born out of that.
Yeah, definitely a death sworn. I mean, come on, you showed interest, first of all, and then you went above and beyond the call. I mean, with the outrage. How dare you?
It was insane. And, like I went to that, the thing with that course was I only realized that when I got there, the majority of people were way older than me. Like that was the first. And the thing was that I got there and nobody wanted to do art, like everybody just wanted to look like they were doing art,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and I like
Oh, yeah.
I was just sort of like completely like first of all, it's insulted, right? Because I'm like really working my ass off to try get good and to try, be able to make the things I want to make. And you guys think that you can come in here and have the same future as me, and just take it all for granted and just sit around and just act like you're an artist, like.
Yeah, that's what I found when I was in college. It's just a lot of people were just taking the class to fill, a requirement or whatever, and I was there to be serious. And when I went, they definitely didn't take comic books seriously. There was no comic book courses, and I went back in the '90s, so I wanted to learn how to do art properly. And of course, I never made it in the comic book industry because I tried for like 20 years, but I went my own way. But they definitely did not like comic book art. They did not take it seriously. I ended up getting into graphic design instead because that would pay bills. But I should have, if I was your age, I'd be doing what you're doing right now.
Absolutely.
Just plugging along. If you had to eat ramen and whatever to get it done.
It's a quote from Aliens, isn't it? Any payday is a treasure. Any meal a banquet. I love the Marine Corps, Colonial Marines.
One of the other things about that course, man, that was just so, it made me even feel more out of place. It was like I said, I got that degree course for the model making, and I turned that down. Well, you see, what happens is that college, that it was a diploma I got or whatever. And I got kicked out in first year. They failed me in the first year of it because I did a comic. I was able to turn a project into doing 3 comic book pages, but I didn't put any reference of other comic books in my notebook. So I got I wasn't allowed in the second year unless I took extra summer classes, because I didn't use anybody else's work because I made something that was completely original. And I was like, are you serious? And I remember I had to go collect my project, and we had to make these big 3D things. And I took my entire folder and I left it in the bin, in the hall, where people were collecting all their artwork, and I just put all mine in the bin. And I took up my my grade and I just ripped it and left it on the floor. Everybody was looking at me like, what the fuck? But the thing with it is that you get those placements in that for the diploma courses way earlier than you get the degree courses, so everybody goes for those first just so they'll have a place after they get their grades in their finals,
Right.
And what happens is that those places get filled, the diploma places, by the people who go on to get the degree places. And so when the degree placements get sent out, all those guys cancel the diploma courses. And so the diploma colleges go crazy, ringing up everybody and anybody who did a portfolio interview and just giving them spaces because they just have seats to fill,
Right.
And so I kind of went in being like, I'm turning down this thing to see if I can do college, to see if I'm fit for it, And everybody else was like, oh, I literally got the call a week ago to come in here. I didn't pass. And I was like, what? No way. No one's here is my guy, It was real, the whole thing was just depressing, man. It was like the worst arty people to be around,
Wow. So they kick you out. They literally kicked you out.
Yeah, they failed me
because
I didn't reference any other comic book artists.
It's because of a footnote, of a technicality, basically. So
yeah, if I googled Barry Windsor Smith and Jack Kirby, and I printed out the 2 first Google images and I just stuck them into my notebook, they would have passed me.
If you copy anyone else, you're a great guy. If you come up with an original design, you're expelled. That's it.
Yeah, because it's just tick the box. They basically say, we have this brief that tells you what you have to tick. If you don't tick the boxes for your piece, you're going. And so
Yeah.
it's actually funny because it's sort of like it's sort of that like gulag kind of mentality where it's like it's not
Absolutely.
about quality.
No.
You know, there's no quality. It's that idea like I read about like how even in shit days, like days where there'd be no crops, the officers in gulags would still send out everyone in the snow, you know, in the freezing cold because they could tick it off. They
Yeah.
could tick it off their list, you know. It didn't
Sure.
matter that like they couldn't even pick up uh you know, a seed that was worth it, you know. And it didn't matter how many people died. It was like just go so we can tick this day off of our list, you know.
Pure example of an indoctrinating system, isn't it? That you have to abide to academia rules just because they have to, to keep a check on the plan, on their check mark, on their check pages. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Oh yeah, and I remember even like I pretty sure at college because they were getting involved in uh what's it called where you sort of you know when you go and you make up banners and you like you kind of put up placards and stuff around the city for like a political referendum. They were getting involved with that in the
Oh,
building, and I was sort of like, isn't that illegal? Like, aren't you a government funded body? And it was one sided, you know, and I was like, and you're doing this one-sided
hmm.
political rally for and it wasn't like the students made it, you know, it was
Yeah.
from the college body.
Wow.
So I
I,
was
I don't know. I never seen that by a college actually. I've seen students doing that. Yeah, you're right, but
oh
not by a
yeah, no, if
college. No.
students did it was fine, but what I saw, it was calls from official college book pages that aren't run by students, you know.
Wow.
And I was like, oh wow. And it's, you know, like it was a really pretty, it's a pretty heinous political campaign that they were doing it for, a pretty like dark referendum that they were celebrating, you know. And
Right.
I was like, wow, that's kind of when I realized like, Jesus, I'm not like,
It's not for you. Let it get out of
yeah,
there.
I'm like, dude, you know.
What you doing now? You're going to a university, or you just
No, I'm
doing your
just
work
I kind of
message?
get some part-time illustration work and whatever other odd bobs and commissions I do, you know. I kind of have a good like locked in for I think maybe 3 more years, like this kind of part-time illustration job. So
Awesome.
Yeah,
And
you're
so
young yet, so
very young. I mean, how's things working with this label you're publishing this with? What's their name again?
Revolve.
Revolve, right? Okay, because they have only a couple of other titles, isn't it? Am I
Yeah, it's only
correct?
like that's actually where I get the other work from, like the kind of locked in for stuff, because it's
Uh-huh.
part of it is creator owned and part of it is just sort of like corporate like books that
Oh,
work
I
with
see.
charities for mental health
Right.
or diabetes or whatever. And so part of that is where it sort of comes from. And so
Yeah.
that helps the creator side of it, you know.
Oh, I've been out for a couple of gigs like that as well, actually. Yeah, and it is something these labels have to compromise and do, otherwise they can't stay afloat just with the indie titles, isn't it? I mean, these guys, well, what's their main sales outlet? I mean, you go on the internet, you sell through Etsy, right? That's their actual sales outlet. But they go to conventions, I presume,
Yeah.
and I guess they probably are distributed in a few shops, at least in Ireland, if not even here in Britain.
Yeah,
Um,
there's it's a lot of local stuff, and I actually got a message from the local Forbidden Planet here asking for they just sold out of all their death sworns, and they were asking me to drop some more
yeah,
in. So
awesome.
it's stuff like that. I've noticed that like death sworn has been really taken up with a lot of people,
Absolutely.
especially the States, man. It's like it's really cool. People
You're
are.
making good sales through that. I mean, through online sales, I would presume.
I mean, it's not insane, you know, but like, I mean, every time I see someone come in and be like, I just got the book or whatever, I'm like, you know, there's something about that it's terrifying because I'm like, oh God, now we have to ship it from Ireland, you know,
Yeah.
especially if it's
More
going to Canada or something. I'm like, oh no, oh God, what's gonna happen? But no, I love it, and even just seeing the other response from artists and other people that really get into this sort of the character, you know, because I
Yeah.
really like doing comics like that pure like Americana, like I'm selling you an IP, like I'm selling you a property, you know, like, and I want you to get into the universe and get into the, you know, the whole Masters of the Universe He-Man crap of it, you know.
As
Like
you
I
guys
really,
probably, I don't know if you
oh
guys noticed, but I solved the camera problem. Yeah, is now switching between each person as we speak. Because I
yeah,
remember hearing a guy in some live stream saying about double clicking, and that's what I did. I double click on one of the boxes. I don't know which one it is, and now it has reverted to default. So we're happy now. We're good.
Trying to get these.
Looking at what Carl, the way he works here, I can see you put your you work for first you do the sketching phase, but then you go on grayscales and you do all your highlights in grayscale. I don't know because I don't work digitally. So is this normally what a guy that like you would be doing everything? So
yeah.
from pencil to ink to colors digitally. Is this a process? You do the highlights in grayscale, and then basically the coloring phase.
Well,
Is it
this,
easier like that?
yeah, well, that these would sort of be my basic pencils. I don't know if you can see them. Yeah, right.
Yeah. I see them, yeah.
And sometimes if I like, if I feel like I really need it, I'll go in and I'll add like the light sources just so I know where the pure white is.
Right.
And also I've had like a couple of people, Narwhal, you know Narwhal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I love Narwhal. But
He was on
Narwhal
my show
and
last
you know Hollow Owl, the guys that are doing that Long Harbor book.
Was
night.
it any
Nashatobi Tim, I think his name is. They all sort of like just one day they all commented on my rim light. They were
Mm.
like,
Yes.
and they kind of, and I've heard Narwhal even reference it as like the Carl's rim light or something like when he did it on a
See?
piece. And so I've sort of been like, that's why I've been laying in lots of grays and trying to figure out where my rim light's going to be because I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I might as well just make it a part of my
That's what I do when I paint. I do what you do. I'll rim light everything first, and then I'll start painting over it. So you can actually, like, if you were to start painting that piece right over it, you could just go in an overlay layer and
Yeah.
start going right over it and just color all those areas.
yeah. Well, when I actually,
Give it a
because
paint.
I've done a couple of like those kind of, you do the grayscale painting first, and I use a lot of like washes and gray tones usually, but I still stick to the multiply layer, like you
Mhm.
set all the lines to multiply and you color underneath it, and I use gradient maps on the gray. And so you get this cool thing because I use texture underneath it as well. And so like if you see all these kind of texture, and the texture layer is on an overlay over the inks and the grayscale stuff. And so when you flatten it and you start the color underneath it and you use gradient maps, you're able to get like these really cool effects where you can start, like you can start spotting in any number of colors into these gradients, you know, and you can come out with some really like cool stuff, you know.
Yeah, that's
Like
right.
this piece here, um, this this one I did Cyber Frog. Um,
Cyber.
yeah, you might have heard of it.
I
Yeah.
heard of that
Yeah,
briefly.
briefly. Trying to find. This is it. So all I did here on this one, okay, was I did a simple, just gradient like this. You know, just a circular gradient, and
Yeah.
then you can just build up on top of that several layers And when you're putting in, it's going to give you that nice gradient when you finally go to put in the colors. If you use, I use a light as well. You use light layers too to go over it. Let's see here, put the green in. And then you put your highlights in and all that stuff. And it's like priming a wall, you know. You want to get a nice, and it'll help you. I'm trying to find another piece where I really did.
And then you can kind of just flatten the color tones, gradients on directly right tail.
You're under fishbowl again.
Oh, I'm under fishbowl again?
Yeah.
Better?
Yes, that's better.
Right. Now, it's just going back to what Carl was showing there. So then basically you straight away can flatten the gradients, the color gradients, onto the grayscale that you've already done there, isn't it? Over the inks, isn't it?
Well, I'll show you. I'll open up a folder that I colored.
Yeah. Sorry, correction. You actually you explained you done the inks over the grayscale.
Yeah. So if I show you this, like that's the inks. That would be the finished inks. You know, so it has the gray tones, the black and white, and whatever. And then if I show you the actual ink layers here, and I have tons of layers on this. I was really messy on this one. Oh no, where is it? All right, so that's the flats.
I've seen you doing these live, actually.
Here is the. So that's what the inks actually look like.
Yeah.
So you can see that I've taken it from that gray, and I kind of used the flats to select the different parts that I might want to change the gradient part of, right?
Right.
So
you ever try duplicating the ink layer and then masking it and trying to do colored lines through that?
Oh, you mean for the black, like a color hold?
Yeah, like maybe for the highlights. See how you got you block out the top there for the on his shoulders and stuff, and instead of making it a hard black, you can go in and put the purple lines in, and it gives it a whole nother.
Yeah. Well, you can essentially do the same sort of thing with a gradient map. So like if I select this, like this is gonna be like ghetto. Really get away. I'm just doing it quickly, but so I have basically his figure selected from the original inks, and if I go into a gradient map here,
right, you can change it.
Yeah, but it's not like you can use that way to actually paint and change each one like part individually. But I like to do the kind of traditional. You slap that down, and then I'll slap white underneath it just so you can see it.
Yes. So here on this graveyard shift one I did the thing with the gray tones. I put a level of gray tones in, and then I started painting over it, putting in all the other colors for each character. And, just used overlay on a lot of it, and so that the gray toning kind of still stays, your lighting, so you don't lose that. And then it kind of gives it a painted feel too. So what you can do it in other ways too. You can just use like what you're doing, use the gradient fills, and it'll give you a smooth look. But I like a little more of a painter look to it, and then make the swords glowy and all that stuff. But sorry about the dog. Actually, I need to get going. I got to go eat dinner. We've been here.
Right.
Like 3 hours, so I need to get going. But this was a great stream. I had a good time.
Thanks for coming, man. And your dog is calling you for dinner.
Yes, he is. Yeah, but
dinner time, man. What's up?
If anybody wants to catch me, best way is Twitter. Check me out at Passion. It's the number 4 and then drawing. All one word, Passion for Drawing, and it's got all my links to all my stuff there, my Twitch, my Instagram, all that stuff. All right, I'm coming, Jake. Jeez. But thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it. This was great. Yeah, anytime you guys just hit me up again, man. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I got
thank
some
you very
work
much for
done,
coming.
too. I
Thank
got
you,
some
man.
work done.
I'll see you later. Speak to you
All right.
later.
You guys
Yeah.
take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey man, where do you come out with this? Where did you come out with this idea for the costumes these women are wearing? This is pretty, very folkloric stuff here.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to make up a lot of the theater people here. Like as they go, I'll just make it up.
You
But
making it up as you go along, or you got the?
yeah, down here I sort of have placements for stuff, I don't want to be too, I try to keep it at least like PG-13. So I'm just trying to come up with sort of mystically,
Yeah,
Conan-y,
that's right.
because
I'm liking it.
a lot of the book, like even, there's like the Dark Stars sort of have like the troopers have like a samurai influence, and the assassins, like, which are higher up than the troopers, sort of have an even more, and they're all women, they have an even more sort of samurai Japanese influence, and they carry swords and stuff. So I like mixing that stuff and dividing things up by factions, so Deathsworn's actually like a past, like, was part of a more military sort of planet he came from, where he had like a almost like Starship Trooper type guys, and so
Uh-huh.
that's where he kind of gets the base of his uniform from. But then his helmet comes from a different place, and the Dominic Danger is a former space pirate, and so the space pirates sort of have these kind of decorative, like, filigree elements of all their sort of buckles and belts and stuff, and they use a lot of earth tones, but they'll also sort of have a technical edge to it. It's sort of like, because it's not sci-fi, none of the book is sci-fi. It's just space fantasy.
Yeah. Space adventure. Yeah.
So yeah, and this whole Empress outfit was like, that's the only panel. It only shows up in like these panels, and I just kind of always had that idea of like these sort of skeleton decorative sort of overlays and stuff,
Yeah.
like running throughout the costume. And then she kind of like has her dad is the emperor, and this is like a weird future manifestation. So she kind of has the
Kind of a
the elements
crown.
of his sort of helmet
Yeah.
on her sort of headdress,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little bit of sorcery there as well with the bones.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff in the book. Like there's sort of it's not a team, but there's like an underlining idea of like the old world versus the new world.
Mhm.
Like there's a lot of like the new age guys that are destroying nature against the sort of the old gods, that sort of used to lurk in the land, sort of I team to it,
Mhm.
but it's in space and it's galactic and stuff.
So this is issue 3, and issue 4 and 5. You think you're gonna be finishing this by when?
Oh God, I don't know, because it depends when other stuff gets in the way, and life has a way of getting in the way,
Oh yeah, that's
and
always.
theater work and stuff, and so I'm finding myself getting faster and faster, but I'm doing the whole book by myself as well, so.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think from here should really be, it's a fun ride out from here, because the hardest sort of leaps for the characters have sort of passed at this stage,
Well, the
and
first couple of issues is always the most difficult ones, isn't it?
yeah, because the first one is sort of, it's fun because you're just setting everything up, and then you kind of have to figure all that out in the second one, because
Yeah.
you have to tie it up. You have to kind of, you've put yourself on a path and you have to really follow it.
Yeah, it becomes more of a chore with issue 3 and 4, but by the 5th, 6th issue, if you're doing a miniseries, then the last issue, if a guy really wants to dedicate himself, that might give a lot of work as well, isn't it? The final issue might be a final leap, a final hurdle, So he's,
Yeah.
when the guy's ready to tire, he's close to giving up on the book. He's still got one more issue to go. I think by 2020 it should be finished. No,
Maybe by the end of 2020.
yeah, by the
But
end of
the end of
2020.
2020, if everything doesn't, if stuff kind of goes sort of bad, then yeah, maybe. If stuff
Oh,
goes good, maybe
maybe before.
earlier.
Right, and then after this, you got any other thing planned? Any other story in the oven?
Yeah, I'm sort of developing some stuff with other people. Like I've had this idea for a long time. I've had this idea. It's sort of like it's I kind of pitch it like it's Metal Gear Solid meets 90s X-Men, you know?
Right.
And so it's sort of like this military surrealism meets kind of the superhero big battle, big personality relationships of the X-Men, you know, with the color and the kind of the American comic book idea behind it, you know. And 90s as well, because it's kind of like set in this world of deep state conspiracies, and you know everything is like everything that happened in the real world just happened for uh, a random, like a completely different reason. There's all these different conspiracies behind everything, and it's set where the Soviet Union is actually just a cover for an even deeper kind of like conspiratorial deep state, you know.
Right.
And
But
so I kind of like just I've been developing that. Like I kind of just threw it out there and to a friend, and I was like, just develop this, like just see where you can walk with this thing. And we've been sort of figuring out bits and pieces, and I'm excited to get into that, you know. But it's like for me, I always see the books like if I'm gonna get into a book, I never really want to do a book that's just a book for a book's sake, you know? Like
yeah,
I really like building these big IPs and these worlds, you know?
that's right. Yeah,
Like
same
these,
here, man. Yeah,
yeah,
you
like
want
a property, a big property that you can
that's right.
like I want people to sort of wonder what else is out there in that world, you know? Like when you got into X-Men as a kid or whatever, and you were like, what would I be like if I was an X-Men, you know? Or
Yeah, you want to do a worthwhile story, basically. You don't want to just do a filler story. You want something that has something to offer, isn't it?
yeah. And so, yeah, but there's lots of stuff in that which is pretty exciting. And
But that sounds very much like a straight action stories. It's got any fantasy elements as well on that
there's
thriller
some
one.
it's a lot of it is sort of like people get powers through sort of experimentation and augments, but there's a couple
All
of
right.
like mysterious supernatural characters in it as well, you know, that actually they come from like other parts of the world where uh stuff actually led to them sort of gaining powers, and some of them are outright supernatural, you know.
Mhm.
When there's other people in it that are just uh, like that way by technology, you know. But
Oh,
it's gonna be, you know, it's it's pretty cool, you know. It's something I'm excited with because you kind of get to map it out in
that's
a
right.
in this kind of fake real world, you know.
Mhm.
It's set in like 1986, and so
1986. Is
yeah,
that because
yeah,
of the
because I
Cold
don't like
War?
I kind of have a weird thing with setting stories in like modern time where I'm like, I don't think there's a lot of
Yeah.
culture we have right now. Like, I think there's like the world sort of gives you too many ways to write yourself out of a story, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I
there's
kind
just
of see
something
that.
about it where I'm like, I don't know. Everything seems so detached. Like, if I was to try to do something now, like, I get it for a regular story, like if you're gonna write a crime novel or something. But if you're gonna like for me, trying to do a big, crazy epic with colorful weirdo characters, I'm like, let me set it sort of in a world,
Yeah.
you know? And
Let me
that's
get
what's
back.
cool about setting it in like this weird conspiracy timeline. as in the 80s, 90s, sort of.
You
You get to
can
play a
always
lot
do
around with a
something
lot of
retro,
stuff.
isn't it? You can always
Yeah,
do
well, it
something
was
retro.
funny because I was just doing the designs for one of the guys, and he kind of had crazy hair, like really crazy hair for a character that's supposed to be sort of serious, like
Right.
at least in this serious setting. But it looked cool with the when all his kind of gear comes together, the hair looks really cool.
Mhm.
And so I was like, oh, well, why don't we just make him? He's just he's really into like hair metal, like he's really into Motley Crue, you know.
Right. Yep.
And I was like, oh, that adds like such a colorful, fun thing to give a character, you know?
I actually a story set in the 70s. Design wise, it's pretty. I think it's a good decade to set something. If a guy likes to waste time with costumes, I mean, verified costumes, contemporary costumes of the decade, and the cars and all that. I think the 70s is a decade that visually it's entertaining to work in. Americana 70s, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Have you ever seen that movie? Oh my God, what's it called? Shane Black did it. Russell Crowe and it's Russell Crowe and I don't
Yeah.
know the other guy's name, but they're like detectives or whatever. They're not detectives. They're
I think
personal investigators.
right. I think I know the one, but I out of my head, I can just think of the title, but I think I know what it is. Yeah.
It's like I'm gonna look up. Wait, let me look up Shane Black. But it has that thing where it's set in the 70s, but it's set in this kind of weird, colorful, like really colorful. Really. The Nice Guys. That's it.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking about that. I
Yeah,
didn't have the title in my head, but I was thinking it was something like that.
yeah, and that's set in this real, like it's like a fake 70s. But I remember when
Right.
I saw it, like I watched it on Netflix, and when the second I saw it, I wanted to do a comic book set in that time, because
Yeah,
I was
that's right.
thinking the kind of the cheesy weird patterns you can use to put on the walls, on the carpets, and the weird kind of just
Yeah.
the use of color and the blues and the oranges. I'm just looking at it now, going through it, and yeah,
Yeah,
there's a
that's
whole
right.
sort of design. There's like this cultural sort of agreement that tells you what time you're in, just based on design and color and style. I
Yeah.
think that's real cool.
Yeah, the late 60s and the early 70s.
Yeah,
It
because
lends itself
it's
to
exactly what you do when
that.
you're making up a sci-fi story or you're making up a fantasy story. You do the exact same stuff.
Yeah, it's just that you have to go more outlandish
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. But you kind of have like, okay, well, this is the design we agree on. That explains the landscape, that explains the style and the type of people and what they would be worried about or what they'd be thinking about.
That's right.
And yeah, but when you think of like modern day stuff, it's sort of like you're like, I don't know where I could find that for it.
Yeah, that's not. I mean, that's because modern fashion doesn't have any particular. There's nothing that defines it, isn't it? There's no
Yeah.
defining feature with
And
modern
anything that
fashion.
is defined is always like just the most annoying thing ever, you know?
Yeah,
Like man buns or some fucking thing.
yeah. I have, to be honest, I have no idea what defines the current age fashion wise. I have no idea what defines it. I mean, we remember what we know what the 70s were about. We have some idea of what the 80s were in terms of what men and women were wearing and all that. But comes the 90s, there's still a few things that drag on from the 80s, which actually had already gone out of fashion. I think it's something funny actually, the way that people remember the 80s. They have this idea of the big hairs, the perms, and the shoulder pads and all that stuff as being very prevalent, throughout the 80s. But to be honest, it was only a certain amount of people that actually they kind of wear and worn those kinds of things, and they were not all the way to the end of the 80s, to be honest. I do remember though that a lot of the haircuts in guys and the way men dressed up, uh, some men, not so much the women. I'm saying this because I was there. I was actually there. I kind of remember it, but I do remember that some of the haircuts of the men. When we're talking about the haircuts of men, we're talking about a working man, basically, a white collar guy, basically, or a blue collar guy. Um, all the way up until mid 90s, they were still pretty much the same that they were throughout the 80s, to be honest. Slightly longish, or sometimes just short, bit more exactive style, or but the idea of that the women, they always had these perms, these very elaborate perms, and the guys, they all look like they were wearing Mel Gibson's mullet, or
Yeah.
that's that was not that prevalent. I mean, that you would probably find that if you would go, well, I would say if you live in the States, mid 80s, and you would go to a shopping mall, you have the working and the lower middle class, and maybe you would see that. Or then you would go to high class places, and maybe you would see more of the perms and more of the shoulder pads and all that. But to be honest, it was not the majority of the population that dressed like that. So all these movies now that are um, ironically set in the 80s, everywhere, obviously, they have to do that for scenery, basically. So, but every time the camera just turns and captures a crowd or a scene with more than five people in it, everybody's dressing up like that. But it's not exactly like that. Funny enough, what I think it was is that a lot of um, a lot of the majority of the persons, the people that could afford less, let's say more of the working class people, they were the ones that kept on having the same kind of facial hair and haircuts, and the trousers belt kind of the shirt tucked in into the trousers belt a little bit higher than than the usual, but now it's considered a bit out of a bit corny. Maybe that actually stayed a little bit longer than what it should, actually, the more trashier style. um, but those things that everybody now thinks of the 80s fashion, the retro 80s fashion, and everyone's brains immediately go to that, the perms and all that. That was not that much. I don't remember that much. I can't remember, actually. I only remember women coming out with well, the women that I used to be close of. I only remember seeing women with these very elaborate perms, or the minute they would walk out of beauty salons, basically, out of hairdressers, and then like 2 weeks later, that was it. that the perm would be gone, and then they will stay like that for another 2 or 3 months. It was not all that thing of the ankle warmers and all that, and the chicks and the gym philosophy and all that. It was not that much. I mean, yeah, there was a decade they really, what is now the health club, the gym. The gyms were places where only guys, used to go. Basically, what I think gyms were is that they were really were places you would go to train boxing and stuff like that, and you would have weights, and then eventually they just became places where they took the rings out, and they just became places where you introduce some cardiovascular machines and all that, and you would be going there more for bodybuilding. Kind of the bodybuilding was very much like, and again, I might be wrong here, but from what I remember from my childhood, the bodybuilding stuff, like Olympia guys, the guys that would train to be bodybuilders, Schwarzeneggers and all the Olympian guys and all that, they would go to specialized gyms, right? But the gym that was open for anybody, the John Doe and the Jane Doe, what it is now, basically. Those things only appear very late in the 80s, to be honest. There was There was what was called, really, I can't remember if it was called a health club, but what was the place where the high paid guy or the executive woman would go, and do their yoga and their aerobic classes and all that, and the guys would be on the treadmill for half an hour and all that. And those places were really, really high class places. There were only like a handful of them, and only if you had very good wages, you really only if you were an executive, you could actually join a club like that, because all the other gyms that were actually affordable, like for you and me, they were really just toned down boxing gyms. They were like
Yeah.
stripped down boxing gyms, basically. That's how I think the evolution was. It was two things, basically: running uh, consecutively, basically. So it was the high caliber health club with the tanning machines that slowly started coming out and all that, and then it was like the really crappy, sweaty gym. Um, so obviously, what we have now is a completely new thing. It's like the LA Fitness and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's sort of,
And
I don't know if it's like, maybe it's just from me growing up in that age, but it's like with the prevalence of social media has seemed to like make gym such a big part of people's lives. Even if they're not getting fit, it's like everybody's in the gym taking photos of being in the gym, you know?
oh yeah, now it's part of yeah, for anyone below a certain age, that's it. It's part of their lives, unless they really are, unless they really like to slack around. But if
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
not a
no,
slacker,
it's like part of the that's actually one of the things that's like part of the culture thing, you know? It's like everybody goes to the gym and takes photos of being in the gym.
yeah. Well, now obviously you have the advantage of the social media and all that. So kind of people kind of feel the necessity of doing that more than ever before. I'm sure if that was available in the '80s, they probably would have done that. But the thing is that, yeah, it is fair to say that the whole bodybuilding thing, the whole stay healthy kind of thing, lose weight and all that. Yes, it definitely became more prevalent throughout the '80s, as soon as the '80s came in, and even in the lower end of the '70s, because especially because of mainly because of this multimedia, not social media, but multimedia became more available. So basically, the VHS, the Betamax, and all that, and what it allowed people to become introduced to and consume was all these videos, aerobic videos, health and fitness videos, and they, we all know they, and it is true, they were starting to be produced in the '80s, by Jane Fondas and people like that, So the philosophy of, you have to stay active, you have to eat well, and you have to exercise, and while you're at it, build a great body, for sure, that started in the '80s, but it was a niche thing. That is, I again, this is all down to my experience, but I don't remember being this big thing that all the movies now and all the literature and even comics that deal in that environment, in that age, the '80s, they make it to be. They make it to be this very big thing that everybody was into it, like now. And I think it's always the case that, you're kind of grabbing what you have now and thinking about another decade and kind of mirroring that. It was not that much. Again, it was a very I'm pretty sure I remember I was a kid, right? And these videotapes would come out, right? And they were, by most of the guys, they were 14 and 15 years old, or even for people that were a little bit slightly older, between 16 and 18, they were kind of jokes. Nobody, they were mainly made by middle-aged people, like the Jane Fonda aerobic videos and all that stuff.
Yeah.
They were not taken seriously, and again, because, as I say, there was really two gyms. It was really the nitty-gritty gym where only guys that really, really were interested in bodybuilding would go to them. So the average boy and girl would not go there. I mean, girls were not even going to that place at all. It was just guys, right? And then the health club, which, yes, it's the David Lloyd's clubs and that stuff, they start popping up. but again, they were very expensive, really expensive to go into. So those videos by those big Hollywood stars and all that, from 1983, circa 1984, 85, and all that, they were really just consumed by people that could actually afford to go into those gyms, or just like a curiosity, as a triviality. So all that concept that the 80s were this decade that was big on big hairs, big suits, and guys in Ferraris going into gyms, that is a fantasy. That I think it was the exaggeration that De Palma was doing with Scarface, and then Michael Mann doing in Miami Vice, the neons and all that. That's all stylization. That's very much an idea, that a prevalent idea that people have from the 80s. But that is the same. Actually, this is funny, because if you go back to someone that is much, much older, and you actually live through the 50s, right? All that concept that we have of the greasers, right, and the guys in the motorbikes, in the leather outfits, right, and fair enough, the women actually did dress up mostly like the fashion that we know. It was the 50s fashion, with those big hairstyles and the nice skirts. That was mostly the fashion for females. That is correct. Women mostly were dressing up like that. But Marlon Brando sitting on his with his leather outfit, sitting on his chopper, that was something very, it was only, if you would go through that decade, the guys would not be dressing up like that. The bikers would be just a handful of guys, just like it is today. Not every guy, not every college student was a biker in the 50s.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with England and and the Arthurian legend. Everybody thinks that medieval England was all this great place full of pageantry and Robin Hoods and hawk riders, and no, it's a fantasy. It's an exaggeration of not even stories and myths were actually created and told at the time, but it's an exaggeration of myths and stories that came much after, with the Neo-Gothic in the late 1800s, and the Edgar Allan Poes and all that stuff, which again is not even an English guy. So as soon as human beings are like that, isn't it? As soon as we go, we get some distance from a certain age, we straight away have a very romanticized idea of that age, because obviously the environment we're living at the moment is always more difficult than our past environment, unless you really had a shitty upbringing. like, like, like if when you were a kid, you would be living in a dungeon, then maybe what you have now is better. But most people, the older years, the years when they were younger, is the ones they remember more fondly, right? So every time we have some distance from where we came, or from where we were, we straight away imagine that place and that age in a, we exaggerate everything. We tend to exaggerate everything. So, the 80s were not so much that. But speaking about the 70s is, again, going back to the stylistic things, I think is a great decade, ripe to make a comic book with all these psychedelic environments, and like you were saying, colors, oranges, these great psychedelic colors and all that. Because late 60s and the late 70s did add a bit of that. I mean, actually, if you probably already watched Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, right?
No, I've never watched it.
You really got to watch that movie. It's a great movie. It's a fun movie, and is based in the writings of that journalist, S. Thompson. And in the book Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which is the book that is actually adapted into the movie, and in the movie itself, halfway he says that he says exactly that the idea that people have from the late 60s and the early 70s did never actually happen, is only it was only something, during a couple of years or maybe just a couple months. I think that's very close to the line he actually has in the movie, and he says that, people have an idea of something, but it was not exactly that. So again, is very it's they're great decades, to make these stories, to set these stories in. And I think there was a book on Indiegogo the other day, and I think it's still there. I think it's still listed on Indicron, I think, which is Johnny Vegas, I think. It's set in the 70s. I think it's a great looking book, looking little book, and these the guy set it in the 70s with all the spark and with all the colors, and the lines are very cool. The lines are very they're very reminiscent of some of the artists that used to do pulp fiction in that decade. Well, check that out. I think, yeah, I'm not sure if it's called Johnny Vegas, but it's something like that. He's a detective in Las Vegas, and he's set in the 70s. I will find it one day, and then might make a video about that, actually. Because I think I wanted to have that guy in this show. I don't remember if I invited him, but it's a fun book. Oh, here you go. Johnny Phantasm. Sorry, not Johnny Vegas. Johnny Phantasm in the Tales of New Detroit, 1977. That's the actual name of the book, actually. Quite fun. Check it out.
Yeah, I'm looking it up here. Yeah, I was thinking with that whole story. Oh yeah, I see it. The skeleton face dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks cool.
That's cool. The interior pages are cool. Colors are well chosen. It's got those weird POVs, like low angles. You can kind of capture the characters with those big bell trousers, the trousers with the flares at the bottom.
Yeah.
Cool designs, and that's what I'm saying. Like a story set in those years, it's pretty cool to get those. And I gotta say, my memory of the 70s is very, very, very faded. Yeah, I was really just a kid, but I do remember that the fashion of people in the 70s, it's actually more. Well, the way the 70s, let's say it in a different way, the way the 70s are portrayed in the movies is actually closer to what the actual fashion, to how prevalent the fashion was at the time. Meaning the people actually did dressed up for most of the decade in the way that current cultural, reimaginings portray them. With the girls with those big earrings, the big cleavages, the loose clothes, quite colorful colors. Well, quite colorful patterns in the clothes. Guys with long hair, a lot of facial hair. Yeah, that was actually, it was a decade with a stronger fashion presence, basically, stronger fashion ideology. Fashion was more prevalent during that decade. I mean, I got photographs of myself hanging out with people, with adults, shot in the 70s, and they're all dressing up like that. So it's actually true. I'm not imagining, because the photos prove it. But to be honest, you see some photos of me hanging out with my school buddies and my college buddies, and you could say the photo was taken today. Not much difference. I mean, the girls would have been more conservative. Yeah, obviously now they're practically naked. most of the women out there, especially if it is summer, any 17-year-old is practically naked. But yeah, apart from that, the girls were definitely more conservative. A lot has changed in these last 15 years. But really, all the way up until mid-90s, it was almost the same, really. Just the only difference that 90s introduced grunge. Introduced grunge, and guys became more disleveled, and then it came the goths. Basically, they were already there in the late 70s, to be honest, because the punk movement was basically that, which is a nothing is a footnote to fashion. The punk movement, they never were important. There's nothing to it.
Yeah.
Most people make it out more important than what actually was. It was nothing. It was like, if the stoners from the late 60s and the hippies from the late 60s are hardly worth mentioning, it's really in reality just a few months of the actual history, and this whole thing that they changed history, they changed culture. Well, they did a few things, nothing wrong with what the hippies did, but they were not that important. They were the equivalent to, let's say, what the Antifa is doing now is the violent version of what the hippies have done, but the Antifa has been doing it since the Occupy Wall Street kind of crap, right? They've been doing this for 5 or 6 years. Yeah, well, the hippies did it for, let's say, 24 months. That's it. That's what it was, and that's me not actually living through it, but hearing about it. And now the punk movement was something that lasted 2 hours. if the hippies only lasted for real 24 months, they were only of any significance for 24 months. Then the punks were only significant for 24 hours. Man, there's nothing there. So it's not really a cultural movement. There's nothing there. But again, the punks are elevated to this almost mythological status now in 2018. Whoever likes that. What they gave you access with was the grunge guys, the grungy guys. They were, the whole Nirvana acolytes and all that, acolytes, Kurt Cobain and all those guys. That is the remnants of the punks. The punks really is 1979, 1980. That's it. Nobody cared about that. Honestly, I had a couple of friends that were actually quite punkish, but that turned into grunge. In the middle of the 80s, they had nothing to do with the punk bands. They didn't care about it. The chicks were just dressing up in kind of these military black boots, fishnet stockings, loose and very cleavaged corsets. That's pretty much a goth, isn't it? So,
That's pretty much it in hell. Like when I think of the alternate sort of fashion, especially people I know, it's like that's exactly what you described. The
yeah,
Doc Martens and the fishnets and
all in black, obviously. All black leather, black lipstick, black nails, black hair, black eyelashes, and all the eye makeup and all that. So they were dressing up like that in the mid 80s, and they were called themselves punks. But that was a nomenclature that went out of fashion very quickly, very quickly. And I think they straight away start calling themselves goths. I think, I don't know why or where that came from. I don't remember having I don't remember ever gothic literature suddenly, not new gothic literature, the stuff that the stuff that Roger Corman was doing, those movies. But those movies are way older, from the 60s, so I have no idea why the goths suddenly, H.P. Lovecraft, I mean, he was out of print already for a bunch of years. I think there was a bit of
well, there's that whole like when it comes to punks, it's like you get the misfits punk end of it, and then you get into the more theatrical punks, and they're definitely more like they're the stepstone to sort of goth stuff, because you have the misfits. They're all the skulls and all that imagery, and then Danzig breaks away from that, and he goes sort of goth metal sort of
yeah,
stuff.
but I just trying to remember where it actually originated from, because I think it comes from I mean, it has to be prevalent in pop culture first and foremost. Otherwise, the youth won't have access to it. What I mean with that is that, if the chicks and the guys, they start taking on this goth gothic appearance, whatever they call it, right? They have to get it from somewhere, right? They have to be influenced by either a movie or a band or something, a group of movies or bands. And the only closest thing I remember that could have possibly influenced them was the Hammer movies. and the Roger Corman movies. They were
Yeah,
doing
well, I know that. Yeah, because when you were talking there, the goth punks, the whole sort of like the bands like the Misfits and all those guys that dressed up and did punk music and stuff, they were all like the Munsters and all those TV shows, you know, the Addams Family and the
yeah.
Munsters and those sort of weird kid monster shows, you know.
Mm. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, what I think it was was a very reserved, a very niche kind of. I think it has to do with paganism, basically. I think it has to do with basically what some of the stuff that the hippies were into. You know, the vision quest, the shrooms, the getting high, sex, and all that stuff. You know, is partially that because the hippies is that. Basically, they're basically left wingers. You know, they're liberals, and they're all paganists. You know, they're all that's what they dig into, and you know, and from pagans obviously you go back to the Celts and to the Druids, and I guess you kind of make some sort of this is me talking out of my ass, obviously, but I think you kind of make some link. You can make some link between what was Gothic and what somehow what the pagans of the pre-medieval age were into. So I think the whole idea comes from that. The punks, though, the guys that are screaming their hearts out in those trashy songs, they were more of a anarchic kind of thing. I think it's slightly separated from the actual goth imagery. The
Yeah,
punks,
well, I'm just going off of like because when I think goth and punk and my only the sort of stuff I like that's goth would be Danzig. Like that's the only goth stuff I like that people would consider slightly, and he's only slightly goth. You know, it's really
mm,
only imagery and stuff. And then that goes back to the Misfits, and then you're like, well,
mm,
the Misfits was like it was like a parody of 1950s sort of
yes,
that sort of
that's right.
uh barber shoppy doo-woppy sort of
Yeah.
pop songs mixed with these sort of horror teams stuff, you know. And the horror team, the 50s music came from all them growing up around Elvis and Roy Orbison and all that stuff.
Oh,
And
but
the horror comes from the pop culture, and then it's like then that moves into like I don't know personal interest. But when you were saying pagan and the Celts,
yeah.
uh, Danzig's first band after he quit Misfits was Samhain. Well, not
Hmm.
Sam, Sound. That's how I'd pronounce it. That's the proper way, but everyone calls it Samhain. But Sound is like the Irish word for Halloween. It's the Irish Halloween festival.
Uh-huh.
And so his shit is all like uh Celtic and pagan mythology and stuff. A lot of his songs.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting, you know. But the stuff you were referring to now, you know, the style that comes from the '50s, you know, the slightly raised jeans and the boots and the barbershop haircut and all that stuff, and you know, I think you mentioned the TV show, the Monsters, and all that stuff. That stuff, I that is understandable because that was counterculture. That was perfectly fine. Again, it was very niche. It was only for the really young people, but that was counterculture because the '50s were, and that is truthful about the '50s. They were very conservative. They were a conservative decade. So obviously, the youth of that time would obviously go for something like that. So that's perfectly understandable. That's why that big movement actually happened in comics with the underground comics. You know, Robert Crumb and Harvey Kurtzman, and doing Mad Magazine and going on to San Francisco and New York, and they're starting publishing these counterculture comics. You know, comics that were not approved by the Comics Code, and they were about you know, drugs and sex, and they all actually start in the '50s. And then they go on through the '60s. That's their main decade. And then later on comes the hippies. The hippies actually is tail end of that. Not the starters, not the hardbringers. They're the tail end of that. But the punk movement. Punk movement is something very localized. It's something, first of all, it's something that started here in Britain. And it really was an anti-political kind of thing because Thatcher takes over, and obviously she's conservative, and that's really much what the punks are. It was not supposed to be a cultural statement. It was more to be like again an anarchic statement. But they're so poorly designed that they're never taken seriously. And it's quite funny to see some Hollywood movies kind of making something about it. It was completely inconsequential, and but again, halfway through the '80s, and you already got what is now considered the goths, and again, I think it's just the remnants of the punks, like you were describing it, and maybe a revival of that late '50s, '60s counterculture. And that's how you get grunge from the '90s, which is again is a bastard child of the punks and the goths. So now I think now they're all still out there, isn't it? But yeah, anyway, the whole point was, yeah, the '70s is a great decade to make a comic book in, and the '80s they were not that big in those perms and the allure flares and all that. So that's the only thing I wanted to alert people to. It was never that big. Although again, a lot of the styles of clothing and haircuts that were used in the '80s, they were still prevalent throughout the '90s. That is true, yes. But yeah, like I mentioned, if I would grab a photo that I have right here from 1985 and a part that the girls look a bit more conservative, you would probably say, yeah, well, this could be any high school at the moment. Not much difference. Oh, the guys definitely don't look different. I mean, t-shirts and jeans. That's really what we were wearing in those photos, 1984, 1985, and here we go, a bunch of years after, and I guess you probably still find most kids in any high school dressed up like that. So anyway, man, I think it's getting a bit late, isn't it, for you and for me as well?
Yeah.
We got to wrap this up.
I did actually a lot. I wasn't planning on. I was just gonna noodle around, but I got a good lot done.
I'm sorry, what you said?
Oh, I was just sorry. I had my mic sort of twisted away. No, I got a good bit done.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, well, I mean, now you showed already different versions of. Let me just lock the screen on you for a second. You show different versions of this as we were going along. The ones where you have already mapped out the colors, isn't it? Or at least
Oh yeah, well the sort of
yeah,
rim light and some
the
of the
rim line.
tones
Yeah,
and
that's
the
right.
shades. I
So
wasn't even planning on like I've recorded like the first part of this, and like did a speed drawing video of it,
mm,
but I wasn't even like I kind of wanted to leave a lot of the gray off of Deathsworn the in the center here,
uh-huh.
but I ended up adding more, and I'm happy because it really draws you like straight to them. You know,
Absolutely, man. I mean, you you got the most of the page done. The most important of the page done is the central panel,
yeah.
the biggest one. You got it all. So you're basically doing the outlines now of the bottom section of that panel, right? But the other panel you got there on the right side, well, that's an easier one, isn't it? It's close-ups, isn't it? So you can probably crack that out in another day or two. You'll be done with that. And then, like I said, you already have all your you mostly got your when you got your lighting there, your highlights. So you just splash some color on that. What are you gonna have here on what kind of tones are you gonna have here? Is this all gonna be kind of a reddish kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking because they're sort of in this at this point in the story, like at the where the characters are when like because only Deathsworn is in this weird ethereal sort of mindscape, but
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
outside of this, the characters are basically like in a sort of waterlogged mine that's being built into this giant temple inside a mountain. So it's
Uh-huh.
very blues and darks and it's very cold. And so I thought just do this pure sort of
Warmer.
nice red lighting, like
Yes.
orange to red.
It feels like that, just by well, first of all, obviously you have the whole sexiness thing there. So obviously you want something a hot color there.
Yeah, and then
And
it's sort of when it cuts into the scenes from Deathsworn's past, a lot of it is around fire and shooting, and so
yep.
everything
Wow.
just leads to red.
I'm loving the lighting there on the chair coming from above. And then if you can put some gold trimmings there on the ladies at attires, that would be great. Even if the skull hands, they could be gold as well. They don't necessarily need to be that ivory white that usually bones have. It could be like,
Oh yeah, no, all that is all of that is like gold,
yeah, kind of a
like
gold
gold
dressage.
jewelry.
It's
Yeah.
awesome, man. Listen, we I could stay the whole of the night with just this on my screen, and I would be very happy to appreciate it. But you gotta,
Thanks.
it's could do a screensaver of this, you know. But you gotta go to sleep eventually. I gotta go to sleep. I'm probably gonna watch a Roger Corman movie now, but a gothic movie. But yeah, listen, man, this. Are you doing a lot of streams of your work? Because I haven't been on your channel that often.
Yeah, no, I've not really. I'm trying to get back into it, and I'm going to be putting up some more speed drawing. And when I'm not streaming, I'm going to record the process, and then just speed it up, put it up there.
You're
People
quite
seem to be
fast.
into that.
You're quite fast already as it is. Just put the camera rolling and leave it there. And by the time you're halfway through a page, you forget the camera is there, and just do a live stream. It's lovely. While you can do a mute live stream. If you check out some colorists and digital workers, some Eula Moss. She's a very good colorist. You've probably seen her color work for Scott Campbell. She's works. He works exclusively with her. They both work together for all. Well, basically, Scott Campbell only does covers by now. He's doesn't do any more interiors, so he does the covers for all this Xenoscope titles and whatever and whatnot. So if you ever have a chance to check one of her streams, it's just that she's just cranking out some punk music actually. Then she just goes about it doing her coloring, and that's it. She shuts the hell up and just does that for 2-3 hours, and you can't believe it. People love it. I have no problem at all with with streams like that. Just do them. Just it's even better than to filming and then you edit the thing and then uploading it. That's too much work. You have to take time off to do that. If you do the stream, that's why a lot of us, all the way from Ethan Van Skyvers all the way down to me, it's easier to stream. You don't have to edit. You don't lose time uploading it. You just go straight into it, and that's it. You create content, and I'm sure there's always people that are quite happy to see what you're doing. I'll be quite happy to have a stream of you on. If you're doing this, just let us know. Do it often. Do it every day. Every time you do this, do one.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. Okay.
All right.
We're gonna stop streaming now. Thank you everyone that popped in, and we'll continue watching this video for years to come. All right, we're gonna go. I'm gonna stop broadcasting. Okay. Bye bye.